Welcome to Infinite Novel. Dive into epic alternate realities. All rights to original creators. Point of no return.
He was briefly tempted with the way Vegeta asked him, but he tried the opposite instead. The trembling racking Vegeta's body finally came to a stop, his grip on Trunks' hand loosening. Trunks took a deep breath and kept his hand on his father's chest, continuing to feed his ki directly to his heart. Vegeta's depleted system was almost desperately absorbing the energy to replenish his almost non-existent ki, and Trunks could feel sweat breaking out on his own skin as he gave Vegeta practically everything he had. Finally, he felt his father's weak and faint heartbeat grow a little stronger. Vegeta's skin, which had been cold to the touch, warmed a bit under his son's hand. When Trunks heard footsteps, he withdrew his hand from Vegeta's chest. Almost immediately, the teenager staggered backwards before falling to the floor, completely drained of his energy. Energy transfer was a technique Gohan showed him, but it was only good for emergencies, and precisely for this reason. Trunks slowly sat up, raising one shaking hand and wiping the sweat off his face. He looked at his father with concern. Vegeta was out cold again, but at least Trunks had bought his father a little more time. Looking over his shoulder, Trunks cursed as he heard footsteps. The alien was coming back. With far more effort than it should have taken him, Trunks crawled forward and got his sword. He forced himself up to his feet and turned around right as the door opened. The blue medic alien walked in quickly, visibly shaken. He had heard the explosions going on outside, but had no idea of the magnitude of the massacre that had occurred. He worked for King Cold in science and medicine, and though he wasn't fond of his superior, the sight of King Cold's beheaded body through one of the ship portals had sent cold fear down his spine. Someone had been strong enough to decimate the deadliest army in the entire universe, and he had a good feeling that the boy who came to him for help was that someone. Alright. I think I can dash. The alien froze at the sight of Trunks, his words forgotten. The teenager's face was red, and he was breathing heavily. His sword was clenched tightly in his fist and his blue eyes were locked right on him. Not knowing that the boy was completely exhausted, the medic assumed the teenager was something else, enraged. You think what? Trunks snapped impatiently. The alien flinched at the teenager's tone and backed up a little, his eyes growing wide. Trunks looked at him in confusion. He had never had anyone stare at him with such terror and apprehension before. He took a deep breath, reminded himself that now was not the time to frighten anyone, and tried again. Look, I'm not going to hurt you, I just need your help. Can you help my father or not? Trunks noted with relief that the alien seemed a little more at ease with that, though not by much. Well, the alien started, his eyes shifting to Vegeta. We have no regeneration tanks on board, which is what he really needs, and he won't survive long enough for us to get to the nearest station. There is a team on board and we think his only chance is if we try repairing the internal damage directly. If we can do that dash you mean surgery? Yes. Judging from how much he's bleeding from the mouth and the bruising, his organs dash. Trunks raised a free hand to silence him. His eyes narrowed and he looked down, his senses picking up something. Someone was out there. The ki was faint, meaning it was either weak or far away. A survivor? Freeza? Trunks cursed under his breath. He was still weak from the energy transfer and was in no shape to fight, especially if it was Freeza who had just arrived. One of his eyes started twitching, and he rubbed at it impatiently. Give him the anesthesia then and do it, Trunks finally said. Anesthesia? Trunks looked back up at the alien in clear disbelief. You don't have any anesthesia? What about pain meds? No, none of that. King Cold and his sons think such things will only promote weakness. It was the most insane thing he had ever heard. Surgery without any kind of pain medication? Trunks stared almost helplessly at the medic, before turning around and looking down at his father who was still unconscious. The heavy bruising littering the prince's torso made Trunks' stomach clench. They had tried putting bandages on the deep lacerations in his skin and on his wrists, but they were starting to soak through. Fine. Trunks spat out in exasperation. He glanced up towards the wall where he could still sense something. Do what you can then. He turned around right as the alien motioned to the door for others to come in. Trunks stepped aside as a team of 3 came in. The head blue alien spoke to them in a foreign language, and Trunks caught more than one look of distrust as they kept glancing over at him. One small purple alien got closer to Vegeta and peered at him curiously, and then immediately backed up in fear once he recognized the prince. Trunks blinked in surprise as they all started yelling and arguing. He might not have understood their words, but he recognized his father's name in the conversation. What's going on? Trunks cut in angrily. The blue alien sighed and turned to him. They don't want to help save him. What? Why not? Because if we manage to save him, his power and his strength will skyrocket. And, the alien cleared his throat and looked over at Vegeta, he is likely to kill us all as soon as he's recovered. Trunks could practically feel his blood pressure rising as his face reddened with growing fury. He didn't have time for this bullshit. If you help him, I promise, you will all live. I won't let him harm any of you, you have my word. But if you refuse, you will die, and it won't be Vegeta who kills you. You got it. Trunks threatened, his eyes darkening as sweat ran down his bare back. He was struggling just to stand, he would be hard-pressed to back up his words. He didn't need to. His message was relayed and that got the aliens moving. Trunks bit his bottom lip, watching them anxiously for a few seconds as they tended to his father. The teenager frowned and glanced off to the side. Yes, there was definitely a key signature he was picking up. Trunks couldn't fight, so there was only one other option, flight. After all, this was a spaceship. He hesitated, looking back over at the aliens. They seemed to be legitimately trying to save Vegeta, but what if they killed him as soon as Trunks left the room? He reached up to rub at his eye, which was twitching again, wondering if he could muster up enough strength to fight if he had to, when the blue alien spoke up. "You have to step out." Trunks was squinting as he looked back up. "What? You're making them nervous by hovering." "Fine," Trunks sighed, "but I need one of you to come with me. We need to fly this thing off this planet as soon as possible." "I don't think that's a good idea. While we do this dash, something out there is coming, and I don't know what. It might be Freeza." At the sound of the tyrant's name, everyone stopped what they were doing and looked over at Trunks with wide eyes. Trunks, though, only at the blue alien. "Help me and my father, and I swear, I'll let you go. Somewhere where Freeza won't find you. You'll be free, all of you. Just please, I need your help." The sincerity in the teenager's eyes wasn't lost on the alien. After a few seconds, he finally nodded. He said some words to the other aliens, and then walked back over to Trunks. He motioned for him to follow, and he did. "You sure they don't need your help?" Trunks asked warily as he fell into step next to the alien. He looked over his shoulder. "They can help him without me. They are more experienced with that anyways." The teenager nodded, before looking at the alien. "Thanks for your help, Naji." "What? That's my name." "Oh, I'm Trunks. Not from around here, are you, Trunks?" Trunks frowned. "Not really, no." "Well, you're not missing out on anything," Naji said, stepping inside of a large control room. "I was in here once when one of King Cold's soldiers set these coordinates, and I'm pretty sure I remember how to do it. If you pull that lever there," he pointed to a red lever by the door, where Trunks was standing, "it takes the ship off the grid, so no one dash." Trunks pulled the lever. Naji just blinked at him, before continuing, "Right. Anyways, you know where you want to go?" The response was immediate. "South Sector. Planet Earth." "Planet Earth it is." Frieza's eyes were hard as he methodically surveyed the damage. His gaze lingered for a second on the beheaded body of his father and the remains of his brother, before he once again looked over the remains of his decimated army. The tyrant crossed his arms and sighed quietly. He had built his army from the ground up, and it was going to be unbelievably annoying to rebuild. And that wasn't even the most pressing matter at hand. That boy. He was so young, and yet. Frieza's tail whipped behind him as he looked down at the severed bottom half of his brother. He sneered in disgust and kicked it away. He had watched every second of the telecast of the trials up until Trunks' transformation, when the teenager's power had ended the video transmission permanently. He was now standing right in the middle of where all the mayhem had occurred, and still could barely believe it. A Super Saiyan? He had heard the legends, and overheard Vegeta, Nappa, and Raditz mention it a few times when he eavesdropped on their scouters, but never once did he think the ridiculous stories actually had any merit. Freeza shook his head in disbelief, recalling his first encounter with Trunks and the brief power reading he got for the boy. Frieza's eyes narrowed. The boy was strong, but he was stronger. Of this he was certain, and he was going to prove it by putting the boy's head on display for any that dare challenge him in the future. "We've checked out the planet, Lord Freeza. There is no one here that's alive." "I see," Freeza murmured, before turning to face Kui. "And what of the flagship, sir?" Kui asked warily, caught off guard. "My father's flagship," Freeza answered, an impatient edge to his tone that sent a shiver of fear down Kui's spine. Freeza looked past Kui as he continued, "It was sitting right there, behind you, during the trials, and now it's gone." "Oh," Kui said, blinking in surprise. "I didn't dash even know it was there in the first place." "Yes, I see that." "Well, Kui, there was at least one survivor of this bloodbath, and my father's ship is now missing. Now, what do you suppose that implies?" Freeza asked, his angry and dark gaze shifting back to lock onto Kui, who actually took a frightened step back. He took your father's ship and left the planet," Kui squeaked out. "Yes, precisely so," Freeza said with feigned politeness as his tail began to whip behind him. "Now, Zarbon is dead and is therefore useless to me. You will take over for him for the time being, and find out where my father's ship is and where it's going. I suggest you do so quickly, unless you want to become dead and useless as well. Am I clear?" "Yes, Lord Freeza," Kui replied, wide-eyed at the silent upgrade in rank. Freeza's glare turned deadly, a reminder that his assignment was more from a lack of options, and Kui immediately added, "I'll get on it right away, sir." "Good. We're leaving now so I can destroy this planet." "Yes, Lord Freeza." "What are you waiting for?" Freeza deadpanned. Not needing to be told twice, Kui scurried away towards Frieza's flagship. The low-ranked soldier looked over his shoulder at the tyrant, as if fearing that he would be struck down if he wasn't looking. In doing so, he tripped over a dead body and nearly fell on his face. Freeza rolled his eyes and looked away. He looked over the slaughtered men again with indifference, and then turned around to head back into his ship. After all, they all had work to do. Trunks was sitting on the floor with his back against the wall, just a couple of feet away from his father, his sword protectively in his right hand. They had done the most archaic surgery job Trunks had ever seen, but that was the best they could do. Naji had told him that most of the time, soldiers as wounded as Vegeta were simply left to die when there were no tanks nearby. Very rare were the times when they had to save someone the way they had saved him, and it showed. But they did it, and he supposed that was all that mattered. Trunks looked over to where Vegeta was resting, and sighed. He had no concrete sense of time, but he knew for sure the equivalent of several Earth days had passed. During all that time, Vegeta hadn't woken up, and Trunks hadn't slept. If Trunks was being honest with himself, it was all starting to take its toll. The stress he'd been under recently had worn him down, physically and emotionally. It had taken the medics hours to help Vegeta, and in that time, Trunks had vomited twice. He was starving, he was sleep-deprived, and he was still reeling from his ordeal with the Tuffles. On top of all that, he had given a good amount of his blood so they could give it to Vegeta. Trunks closed his eyes. It was quiet, and he could sense that the alien medics were on the opposite end of the ship. Even though Naji popped in every now and then to check on Vegeta, it was obvious the others were scared of him. Trunks didn't much care though. He liked the quiet. He was about to doze off for some much-needed sleep when he sensed motion. Forcing his eyes open, he looked over at his father. Vegeta tried opening his eyes, but he couldn't manage it. He tried moving, but he couldn't do that either. Everything hurt. Badly. He could only recall 2 or 3 other instances in his life where he had felt worse pain. That's what the damn tanks were for. Why wasn't he in one? Where the hell was he? Frustrated and disoriented, Vegeta forced himself to move. The strain quickly made his face red, and he barely managed to lift one shoulder to roll over when he was quickly stopped. "Hey, take it easy," a familiar voice said. A strong hand was on his shoulder and easily pushed him back down so he was flat on his back. "You're not ready for all that yet." Vegeta growled and tried speaking, but his jaw was wired shut. He squinted up at Trunks with effort, before closing his eyes again. "Why the fuck is it so bright in here? Turn that light off," Trunks heard his father's angry voice say in his mind. The teenager blinked and looked around. The room was dimly lit so he could rest better. "How do you feel?" Trunks asked, frowning in concern. Vegeta's face was bright red, his eyes squeezed shut in pain. Fresh sweat was starting to break out all over his body. "Told you what you had to do, boy. You didn't do it." Trunks sighed. He should have known. His exhaustion suddenly came back in waves. "I couldn't. You're my father. You know that. So you can kill everyone else, but not me, just because we have the same goddamned blood," Vegeta sneered in disgust. "It's insane and I won't ever do it. Hell, I saved your life dash I didn't ask you to save me." Vegeta's mental voice snapped venomously, so much so that Trunks flinched. Vegeta was panting through his nose, struggling to breathe. Alright, just take it easy dash one thing. Just one thing. Only thing I ever asked you for. Couldn't even do it. I thought you were strong, but you're still the same goddamn soft-hearted fool you were when we found you." Trunks grit his teeth and looked down, his face reddening in frustration. He stayed silent for a moment before looking up at his father. Was anything ever good enough for this man? "Look," Trunks finally started, his eyes narrowing. "If I wanted you dead, I would have just let Freeza end you. Or Zarbon. I came back to save you and that's what I did. If that makes me soft or whatever, then fine. So be it. But I don't get why you would want to die. You're going to get better. Why the hell can't you see that?" Vegeta projected nothing mentally, falling into a bitter silence. What did the boy understand anyways? He was just that, nothing but a boy, unaccustomed to true hardships. How could he explain to his son how demoralizing it was to be broken down by Freeza the way he was? The tyrant had broken him physically and then mentally. He had fucking begged for his tail, and then lost it anyways. The only thing that made him Saiyan was gone, stripped from him like a damn toy. It was humiliating. Hell, the boy was practically more Saiyan now than he was. Trunks had achieved the state of the legendary Super Saiyan. What the hell had he ever achieved? A lifetime of wreaking havoc in Frieza's name? With tremendous effort fueled by what little pride he had left, Vegeta forced himself to roll onto his side, giving Trunks his back. That was a good thing, since his face was beet red. He was clenching his fists so hard, fresh blood was seeping through his fingers as he dug into his palms. "Get out, kid," he growled. If the boy wasn't going to put him out of his misery, then the least he could do was leave him in peace to suffer alone while he regained his strength, both physical and mental. What Vegeta didn't know was that he wasn't in total command of his telepathy yet. In brooding over what Freeza had done to him, he had unknowingly projected to Trunks the images of what happened with the tyrant. The teenager was left wide-eyed, staring at the small stub of fur on his father's lower back, a stub that was red and swollen at the tip from where the rest of the tail had gotten cut off. In all the chaos, he hadn't even noticed that Vegeta had lost it. Trunks opened his mouth to tell his father that he was sorry about his tail, but he wisely thought better of it. Pity or sympathy would not be welcomed, not now, and possibly not ever. He shifted his weight uncomfortably, wanting to offer some kind of comfort, but not knowing how. Finally, he sadly realized he could only offer that comfort by leaving Vegeta alone. The prince was solely focusing on breathing as Trunks started walking away. Vegeta was relieved, and finally let himself relax as much as he could under the circumstances. He was almost out again when he felt Trunks put something in his bloodied hand. "I went back to base looking for you. No one was there, but I found this. I thought you'd want it." Vegeta frowned. He didn't need to open his eyes to know that he was holding the broken armor piece with his family's royal crest engraved on it. "You keep this. It's useless shit. You keep it." "It's your useless shit," Trunks said, smirking a little. "If you don't like it, then get rid of it. Though it doesn't seem like you've ever been in a rush to." "Watch your mouth, boy," Vegeta warned. His warning lost some effect when his voice came through weakly. "Just saying. He took your tail, but there are some things he can't take, so don't let him." "Get lost, half-breed," Vegeta snarled. "You have outworn your welcome. Suit yourself," Trunks sighed. Vegeta heard his footsteps, and then a door opening and closing. Then there was silence. Vegeta breathed deeply through his nose. Not for the first time, he gripped the broken piece of armor tight to crush it to pieces. What the hell did he need it for, anyways? He knew the crest by heart, had memorized every line. It was useless shit, just like he'd told Trunks. Worthless. Not for the first time, Vegeta loosened his grip right as the piece was about to break. As soon as he did, he sighed, and was out again, falling into a deep, healing sleep. As soon as he did, Trunks came back in. The teenager checked over his father briefly, making sure he was as comfortable as he could be. He then walked over to the wall again and slid down until he was sitting. He pulled his sword close. Even though the other aliens were scared to death of him, he still didn't fully trust them. Finally, after a few minutes, he couldn't fight his fatigue anymore and he fell into a restless sleep. I am not sure of his name. He's a lavender-haired boy with blue eyes. He has a sword which he knows how to use. I am not sure if Vegeta survived or not, but it seems that the two are allies, at the very least. This boy is powerful for his age, but I am sure you can handle bringing him back here. Use Vegeta as leverage if necessary, if he somehow managed to survive. Yes, Lord Freeza. Kui will get you a lead soon on their location. Very good, Lord Freeza. Good luck, Jinyu, Freeza said, before reaching up and ending the transmission on his scouter. His eyes remained fixed on a large screen in front of him. He rotated his glass of wine with one hand as he stared at the screen with intensity, where Trunks' Super Saiyan transformation was being played over and over again on an endless loop. It'd been days now since the fiasco at the trials, and while they worked on finding his father's ship, Freeza had entertained himself by unifying his father and brother's military forces under his ranks. And, of course, watching the loop of Trunks' transformation whenever he had a moment. Freeza raised his glass for a drink, and cursed inwardly that the video feed died just moments after the boy transformed. It would have been useful to see him live in battle. Lord Freeza, one of the technicians said, letting himself right into Frieza's office. We have dash that was as far as he got before Freeza sent a beam straight through his heart, without moving his eyes from the screen. The technician was dead before he hit the floor. Honestly, how many times did he have to tell them not to barge in like that? They would never learn. Freeza sighed. Maybe he was going to miss Zarbon. May I come in, sir? A terrified voice squeaked from the door. Of course, Lino, Freeza politely greeted. What was the reading? Well, the machine exploded while it was still climbing dash. What was the reading? The last recorded reading was over 5 million, sir. That made Freeza look over. What? He asked, blinking in disbelief. Did you say 5 million? Yes, Lord Freeza. And all signs indicate that he was not fully powered up to maximum when the machine finally exploded. A chill ran down Frieza's back right through his tail. He turned his attention back to the screen. That is all, Lino, the tyrant dismissed, almost absent-mindedly. As the technician ran away for his life, Freeza raised his glass for another drink, mulling over this new information. 5 million. How preposterous. How was that even possible? He would have found the boy a long time ago, even if he was on the furthest planet at the edge of the universe. That power was higher than his even at maximum strength. No, he would not have missed such a powerful boy. Plus, there was no way he could be so young and so outrageously powerful. Super Saiyan or not. No, clearly, the power level reading was simply wrong. It had to be. There was no other explanation. Freeza scoffed as footsteps sounded by the door again, before lingering there. That is enough, Lino, Freeza said, sounding bored as he started rotating his wine glass. The power level is wrong. I have no doubt of this. I will prove that the boy is not that strong, and destroy the half-breed monkey personally. That is all. You fight that boy, you will die, Freeza. Frieza's eyes narrowed and his hands stilled. Slowly, his seat rotated so he was facing the door. He stared at his new guest for some time, before beginning to lazily rotate his glass again. He feigned a smile, even though his eyes were murderous. Well, you sure are resilient, aren't you? More so than you think. I like your new legs. Metallic. How modern of you. I did what I had to do. The boy mutilated me, but he didn't finish me. My men worked to the bone and made me better than ever. I see that, Freeza snidely responded as Cooler stepped forward. Freeza leaned back in his chair. Unfortunate what that monkey did to you and father. Absolutely heinous. Did you look for him? I did. Searched the planet. Didn't find him, or you, for that matter. Because I would have ended you permanently if I had, Freeza mused silently. I called for my men to come retrieve me. The boy had already taken father's ship, it seems. Indeed, he did. I destroyed the planet after my search, and I have my men looking for father's ship now. We will find him soon. And then what? You will destroy him. Cooler sneered. That is the plan, yes, Freeza sneered back. Cooler growled angrily, his new, metallic tail whizzing behind him in irritation. Your arrogance blinds you, brother. This boy is stronger than you. He will destroy you easily if you rush into this battle. Well, someone has to kill the boy. And it certainly won't be you, since you're too weak. And it won't be father, since he's dead. Yes, father is dead, by the boy's hand. And that is precisely why the boy must die. That monkey made a mockery of our family, and I won't stand for it. Freeza rotated his glass quietly. He didn't give a damn about his father dying, or his brother dying either, for that matter. He wanted the Saiyan boy dead because he hated the thought of some monkey mutt being stronger than him. That was it, and that was all. Cooler had pride in their family, and his motives were different. He wanted revenge. Freeza almost snorted in disgust. Revenge was emotional. Emotions were weakness on the battlefield. Freeza sighed. If only his brother had stayed dead. What do you suggest then? Freeza asked out of curiosity, looking back up at his older brother as he took a sip from his wineglass. An alliance. Come again. You heard me. I am stronger with the repairs my men made. Separately, neither of us is a match for him, but together, we can share energy. It has been a long time since we tried that outdated technique, and last time, it doubled both of our strengths. How poetic. Two brothers working together to avenge their dear father. This is serious, Cooler snarled, his metallic tail whipping now. The boy is a Super Saiyan. I could hardly believe it when I saw it. The only way we can destroy him is by working together and doubling our strength through the old technique of sharing energy. Freeza finished his wineglass, and then crushed it to pieces in his hand. His seat slowly rotated until he was facing the screen again. He watched Trunks transform again, and could practically feel the power the boy was unleashing just by watching the feed. And that was with the sound turned off. He couldn't imagine seeing it in person. It's the only way, Cooler said, now standing with his arms crossed as he also watched the screen. His eyes were dark with hatred and revenge. Freeza observed him out of the corner of his eye, before looking back at the screen. So it seems, Freeza finally said, I will accept your alliance on one condition. What's that? I deliver the killing shot. Done. Trunks woke up hours later, though it felt like minutes later, when he felt someone nudging him in the shoulder. The teenager frowned and looked up through bleary eyes to see Naji standing over him. Saiyans like to eat, right? I brought you something, the blue alien said, handing something down to him. Trunks yawned and took it, looking at it closer. It looked like a loaf of bread. He squeezed it. At least it wasn't rock hard. He looked up and gave Naji a grateful smile. Thanks. Don't mention it, kid. Least I could do, with what you promised to do for us. Trunks nodded, and broke off a piece of the bread. He tossed it into his mouth, before looking over at Vegeta, who was sound asleep on his side. Trunks frowned, wanting to save some bread for him, but not sure how that would work with his jaw. His jaw is healing fast. It was a clean break. The other injuries are what's taking time. Oh, that's good then, I guess. About his jaw. Yeah, Naji agreed, glancing at Vegeta with a bit of apprehension. Anyways, let me know if you need anything, kid. Alright, Trunks said. He looked down and kept eating as Naji left the room. He was eating slowly even though he was starving. He didn't know how much food they had, and from what Vegeta had told Nappa and Raditz, Earth was far from where they were. Trunks' head snapped up. Shit, he'd forgotten all about Nappa. He's dead. Don't waste your brain power on that fool. Startled, Trunks looked over at his father with open-mouthed surprise. Vegeta was awake and squinting at him. You heard me, Trunks asked. Vegeta growled from deep in his chest in annoyance. Trunks smiled. Yeah, dumb question, huh? Wow, I didn't know I could talk to you using my mind. Of course you can, you just have to learn how. Will you show me how? The hell do I look like? Your mother? Teach yourself, boy. Trunks nodded, before his smile disappeared as he remembered what had triggered the conversation. Wait, Nappa's dead. Vegeta sighed and closed his eyes again. Yes. Freeza, not exactly. Trunks waited for more, but no more came. He opened his mouth to press, when Vegeta cut in. Where are we going? I set the coordinates to go to planet Earth. Earth? Vegeta asked, some confusion in his voice. Yeah, Earth. Raditz. Right, you sent him there. Purge it? No, to get Kakarot, Trunks said, looking at his father with some concern. You sure you're okay? I'm fine, Vegeta answered in a groggy voice, more asleep than awake. I can leave and you can get some rest if you want. Don't need rest, and I don't fucking need you to look out for me, boy, Vegeta snapped, his voice suddenly alert as he opened his eyes partway to glare at Trunks. Trunks offered him a warm smile in response. Whatever you say. Arrogant little prick. Well, I am your son. Vegeta snorted, and smirked a little as his eyes closed. Fair enough, kid. Can I ask you something? No, I'm going to ask anyways. Don't you ever shut up? Depends for who. You can't really do anything to stop me right now anyways, unless you want me to leave so you can rest. Fine. Shit, this is why I never wanted any brats. Fine. One question. Get on with it, boy. I only get one question. That counts as a question. We're done. What? That doesn't count. Trunks yelled. Vegeta winced, and Trunks immediately added in a softer voice, that doesn't count. You know damn well it doesn't. You know damn well that you're lucky I can't move, or I'd break some bones on your face, Vegeta growled. Yeah, well I should take advantage while I can. Vegeta took a deep breath, swallowing heavily. His head was hurting fiercely, but it paled in comparison to the excruciating pain racking the rest of his body. Talking to the boy was actually helping keep his mind off it, making it at least a little more bearable. Alright. One question, Vegeta said again, his voice tired. Might as well humor the kid. He had nothing else to distract him from his pain. What were your parents like? On second thought, the pain wasn't that bad. Oh, fuck this. Get out so I can get some damn sleep. Hey, come on, you said you'd answer it, Trunks said. Father and son both frowned at the same time. That's not fair. Life's not fair, Vegeta sneered. Deal with it. I know that life's not fair oh? And what have you ever struggled with? Vegeta asked snidely. Fine, you want to know? Fine, then I'll tell you. When I was an infant, these androids were unleashed on my planet. They killed everyone. That's what I had to grow up in. They killed everyone I cared about, everyone I loved. I had to learn to protect my mother, and the people that were left. I had to learn how to survive. And even right now, I'm not there with my mother, and I have no idea if they found her and killed her yet. If they do, I have to live with that. I left on this trip not to come ruin your life. I was looking for someone who could help save my world, and I failed. And fine, I didn't have it as hard as you. I see that now. Your life is hard, but I didn't exactly have it easy either, alright. Trunks' face was red and hot. He didn't realize until he finished his rant that his eyes had started to water as he talked about his mother. He looked away, took a deep breath, and reined in his tears. The stress was getting to him again. The silence was thick between them. Trunks snuck a look at his father, but Vegeta had his eyes closed with a scowl on his face. Trunks sighed and looked down, admiring his boots. I didn't know my father that well. Only saw him every few days or so. I was small when he handed me over to Freeza. Freeza later killed him. Nothing more to say about that. Vegeta's voice was tired again. Trunks massaged his damaged knee quietly and kept his eyes down, as if afraid he'd ruin the rare moment by looking over or saying something. My mother was a good queen. I spent most of my time with her up until she was killed. Freeza ordered it, for whatever blasted reason. It happened in front of me. Nothing more to say there either. Do you ever miss them? I said one question, Vegeta growled. Silence for a minute, and then, but to answer your question. No, I don't miss them. Really? Why not? What's the point? They're dead. I guess. My turn. Who the hell is your mother? Oh, well, you probably don't remember her, Trunks said sheepishly. Try me. I remember all my good lays. Trunks' face flushed red. Well, you know, she was just a girl you had a thing with dash. What did she look like? Trunks shrugged, trying his best to appear disinterested as he looked away. Ah, you know. Blue eyes, like mine. Vegeta frowned. I've never had a woman with your coloring. You're tired. We'll talk about this when you're clearer, Trunks offered, sneaking Vegeta a nervous glance. He hadn't given much thought into how much to tell Vegeta about Bulma. Maybe it didn't matter since he already knew that he had a son, but telling him the absolute truth would mean telling him about time travel, since Vegeta would quickly realize he had never met the woman Trunks was describing. What was her name? Vegeta persisted. You mean you actually took note of some of their names? Trunks asked with a smirk. Vegeta snorted, before Trunks heard a mumble in his mind, thinks he's so damn smart. The prince shifted and tried rolling onto his back again, but his face quickly betrayed his agony. Trunks got up as fast as he could. Here, let me give you a hand. He reached out to Vegeta, who batted his hand away. Don't need your damn help, boy, Vegeta growled. Trunks sighed and stood his ground, ready to help if needed. He winced at the badly damaged skin on his father's body, both from Frieza's session and beating, and from the hackjob surgery they needed to do because of it. Vegeta groaned and panted for air as soon as he was on his back. Oh, what he would give for a rejuvenation chamber. He squinted up at Trunks, ready to mentally bark at the boy to go away already. He stopped when he saw the teenager looking him over with a look that Vegeta hadn't seen too often in his life, genuine concern. Vegeta almost didn't know what to say to that look. He frowned and leaned his head back, observing his son. He sighed. Maybe Freeza hit him one too many times in the face. Here, kid. Trunks looked over, blinking in surprise when Vegeta offered him back the broken piece of armor. What? No, that's yours dash take it, or I'll destroy it. Besides, your chain is gone. You need a replacement, even if it's this shitty thing. Trunks took the broken piece back and smiled a little. Thanks. Whatever. Now go get lost, boy. I'm tired of seeing your face. Alright, I'll leave so you can sleep. HN. So lucky I can't move, Vegeta muttered as Trunks walked to the door. He was sound asleep before the door even closed behind Trunks. The teenager immediately walked back in, went back to his usual spot, and took a seat. He looked over the broken armor piece, and smiled a little as he rotated it in his hands. He was slowly starting to get to know his father, and he couldn't have been more pleased. He put it in the inner pocket of his jacket, and then picked up his sword again, his smile slowly melting into a troubled expression. He was relieved to finally be going home. He could gather the Dragon Balls and wish to go back to his time. Then his mother from his time could fix the time machine, and he could go back and set things right. Maybe even use the Dragon Balls again to wish for his father's memory of him to be erased. Yes, everything was falling into place. Why, then, did it feel like he was making a horrible mistake by going to Earth? Trunks frowned as he tried surveying the area. He couldn't sense a thing. Straining his hearing, he tried picking up a sound as he walked against the wall, but everything was quiet. Too quiet. He peeked his head around a corner, and caught a glimpse of a shadow move. He reached up behind him to grip his sword, but his hand only met air. He barely turned around in time to duck out of the way before his own sword took his head off. Vegeta whirled the sword with an expertise that caught Trunks completely off guard as the teenager suddenly found himself on the defensive. He dodged his father's relentless attacks and then reappeared behind Vegeta. The prince snarled and tried elbowing Trunks in the face, but his son ducked and kneed him right in the kidneys with much more strength than he intended to use. Vegeta immediately dropped to his hands and knees, coughing hoarsely. Trunks' eyes widened in alarm and he knelt down next to his father, putting a hand on his back. "Hey, you alright?" he asked worriedly. "I didn't mean to dash." He was interrupted by a hard elbow right to the face that sent him right against the wall. Trunks glanced up in surprise, brushing at his now bleeding nose with his forearm. "Fucking idiot," Vegeta hissed. "Drop your guard and you're dead." Trunks suddenly reappeared behind Vegeta again, when his father surprised him by doing the same thing. Back to back, Vegeta hooked Trunks' arm and turned him around, grabbing the teenager by the throat and bringing the sword down hard as he forced Trunks to bend over backwards. Trunks caught his hand, and was surprised by how much strength he had to use to stop Vegeta from killing him right there. Vegeta's hand was shaking as he used as much strength as he could to try bringing the sword down all the way, now only inches from Trunks' throat as he continued forcing the teenager backwards. "What are you going to do now, Super Saiyan?" Vegeta sneered down at Trunks. Trunks was grinding his teeth together. He could easily overpower his father with raw strength, but that wasn't the point of this particular exercise. His ki was off limits as well, leaving him scrambling as he thought of what to do. Vegeta smirked and tightened his grip on Trunks' throat. "What's the matter? You seem a little uncomfortable." Trunks then surprised Vegeta by stopping his resistance and falling back, forcing his father to fall with him. Vegeta rolled forward and got back up fast. He turned around and Trunks kicked the sword right out of his hand. The teenager attempted a roundhouse kick that would have taken his father's head off, and Vegeta was barely able to lean back far enough to get out of the way as the two exchanged near misses at a speed too fast for humans to follow. Vegeta finally broke the stalemate by blocking a punch and then painfully twisting Trunks' arm as he came up behind him. He punched Trunks hard right in the back of the head before the teenager elbowed him in the face. Trunks spun around and tried kicking Vegeta in the chest, but the prince caught his foot. Lightning fast, Trunks used his father as leverage and nailed Vegeta in the side of the head with his other foot. Vegeta saw an explosion of bright colors as he spun and dropped to his knees, in a daze as he tried shaking off the blow. He tried to get up when he felt the heel of Trunks' palm press up against the back of his head. Game over. HN. Vegeta slowly reached up to feel the side of his head, bringing his hand down to make sure there was no blood. Trunks came around and offered his father his hand to help him stand, but Vegeta growled and batted his hand away. "I do not need your help." "Alright," Trunks said, reaching behind him and putting his sword back in his holster while Vegeta got back up to his feet. His father never once took his hand, but that didn't stop Trunks from always offering. "You still need to work on your defense. You leave yourself unguarded too much of the time. It'll be different in a real fight," Father Trunks said, pulling his hair back to tie it up. "I'll be able to use my ki. You'll have to fight Freeza in hand-to-hand combat, where he is the most skilled warrior in the universe," Vegeta spat out. "Remember that you have lost the element of surprise in this battle. He knows how strong you are now and he will compensate." "Yeah," Trunks sighed. He still wasn't sure if he should even fight Freeza. It just wasn't his fate to do so. He shrugged in an effort to appear calm, but he came across indifferent as he continued, "That's alright though. I'll still win." Vegeta scowled and stared at his son. In his mind, it was only a matter of time before Trunks fought Freeza, in a battle that should have been his. It had taken him a little time, but he was starting to accept the fact that if he wasn't going to be the one to destroy Freeza, then it was only appropriate that it was his son who did the job. Still, Vegeta couldn't help but feel anxious, and that wasn't something he was accustomed to feeling. He knew Freeza well, and knew that the tyrant had seen Trunks' transformation. He was always watching the trials and this past one would have been no different. Vegeta knew that Freeza would try to do something to even the field with his son, but he didn't have the first clue as to what the tyrant might do. And between not knowing how Freeza was going to approach the battle, and his son thinking the fight wasn't even going to be worth his time, Vegeta felt like killing someone. Literally. Finally, Vegeta just shook his head, turned, and walked away. He rolled his eyes in annoyance when he felt the boy start to follow him. The kid rarely left him in peace. He had no doubt that he would have killed the boy by now if it was anyone else, but since Trunks was still stronger than him, there was little Vegeta could do except reluctantly tolerate the boy's presence. "How did you manage to actually get my sword out without me feeling it?" Trunks asked as he fell into step next to his father. Vegeta sighed, before blandly replying, "I simply removed it from your holster. It's not my fault you are oblivious to your surroundings." "I'm not that oblivious," Trunks snorted. "Could have fooled me," Vegeta grumbled, before glancing over at Trunks. "Don't you have your friends to go visit?" he sneered. "Naji and the guys have us on target. I already checked in with them. You know that we'll have to kill them sooner or later, yes?" "Ah, come on. They've been helpful. You know it. They saved your life, remember?" Vegeta frowned at him and then looked away as they approached the room the prince had unofficially claimed as his own. He didn't enjoy talking about that entire fiasco. Thinking about how weak he had been with Freeza was enough to get his blood flowing with rage. He was reminded of his humiliation every day when he got dressed and didn't see his tail, even though he could still feel it like a missing limb. Somehow, come hell or high water, Vegeta vowed to make Freeza pay for that, and so much more. "Just keep them out of my way, or I'll rip all their heads off." And you stay out of my way too, boy, or you'll get the same treatment, Vegeta snarled, not even looking back at Trunks as he disappeared into the room. Trunks smiled a little. He was in a pretty good mood, and not even his father's sour disposition could bring him down. They had been in space a long time, but they were close to Earth now, which was fantastic for him. It was going to be great being back on his little blue planet. Not to mention, it was nice spending so much time with his father. As soon as Vegeta was able to stand on his own again, they had been fighting every day. Sometimes, Vegeta taught Trunks what the teenager had always considered dirty tactics in fighting, as the prince attempted to teach his son that there was no honor in fighting clean if it meant that you would lose. Most of the time though, they simply sparred. No ki, no Super Saiyan transformations, just pure skill and technique. Trunks always won, mostly because Vegeta became livid each time Trunks held back and tried to work at his father's level. Trunks didn't understand that too much, but he did as his father wanted. To his amazement, the harder he knocked Vegeta down, the faster the prince would get back up and the more violent his attacks became. Even though Trunks always won the spars in the end, it was becoming increasingly more difficult to do so without transforming into a Super Saiyan. Vegeta was becoming faster and stronger by continuously pushing himself to keep up with Trunks, and he had a relentless drive to better himself as a warrior that Trunks had severely underestimated. As time continued to pass, Trunks started to understand his father better on a more personal level. Strength and power mattered to his father, but not as much as the unwavering pride that he wore like a chip on his shoulder. Vegeta was a mean bastard, a fact that was only confirmed the longer Trunks spent with him, but the teenager was starting to see that there was a lot more to his father than met the eye. Trunks often found himself awake when everyone else was asleep, wondering what his father might have been like if Freeza hadn't entered his life. It did well to take his mind off how screwed up this timeline had become, and what that meant for Earth now. Trunks entered the main control room, where the other aliens were. He was grateful for their presence. As much as he loved getting to know his father more, it was nice to have others around who weren't as difficult to talk to. After their mutual distrust of each other passed, he found the aliens on the ship to be nice and friendly. Naturally, they steered clear of Vegeta, but it was useful to have them there nonetheless. They knew more about the ship than both Vegeta and Trunks. And of course, Trunks felt indebted for their help with saving his father's life, even if Vegeta didn't share that sentiment. Hey, kid, come here, look at this. Trunks walked over to where Naji was standing at the controls with another alien, who handed him a sheet of paper. The teenager took it and looked it over, but he couldn't make out a thing on there. It looked like a bizarre mapping of different shapes and lines to him. What is this? He finally asked. Come on, Trunks. Still can't read Galactic Standard? Naji asked him with a smirk. Nah, I've been trying to figure it out but it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense to me. Look, this is where we are now, Naji patiently explained to him, pointing to what looked like a cross. Planet Earth is in this part of the south sector, he said, his blue finger shifting over. Now this planet here is not far from Earth. It's called Pyrus. We can go there to restock on supplies and food for you and your father, and we'll stay there while you two continue to Earth. Trunks nodded, following along. That sounds fine. How much longer do you think? Not long at all. We should make it to Pyrus within several hours, which is good because the ship is running out of supplies. And we would rather your father not kill us and eat us, if we could help it. Trunks laughed. Oh, come on, he wouldn't ever do that. Naji and his alien companion exchanged a look. The alien muttered in a foreign language, it's like he doesn't even know his own father. Naji nodded in agreement, before looking back at Trunks. Kid, believe me when I tell you that we'll all be a little happier getting away from Vegeta. Trunks nodded, though he couldn't help his disappointment. No matter how much insight he got on his father, he couldn't erase what Vegeta had done, nor could he guarantee that his father wouldn't revert to type in a heartbeat if provided the opportunity. Still, he was steadfast in his belief that his father could change. He resisted the surge of hope inside of him that maybe Vegeta already had changed for the better, just by not slaughtering the aliens in front of him even though he was able. He looked up, and saw the clear distrust in the aliens looking back at him, distrust that was aimed at his father. Trunks sighed. It's alright, he finally said. I understand. If that's the planet you guys want to stay on, that'll work. I'll go let him know what's going on. He handed them back the piece of paper and then walked out. The ship was deceiving in its size. When he'd first run in trying to get Vegeta help, he hadn't expected it to be so large. And he definitely hadn't expected the advanced technology that the ship used. He'd never seen anything like it. Without even knocking, Trunks walked into the room Vegeta had claimed as his. It was the lab-turned-rudimentary hospital while the prince recovered from his near-fatal injuries sustained at the hands of Freeza. As time passed, it simply became Vegeta's room just out of convenience. Vegeta cast Trunks a dark, upside-down glare when he simply strolled in. The prince was doing one-handed handstand push UPS to pass the time. If he wasn't sleeping or sparring with Trunks, then he passed the time either meditating or working out. He enjoyed the time alone to think over things, he therefore did not appreciate this interruption. This had better be good, boy, Vegeta bit out, continuing his methodical push UPS without missing a beat. Well, we're almost there, Trunks said. We're going to make a quick stop on planet Pyrus to stock up on some stuff, and then we'll go to Earth. HN. Vegeta dropped down and landed on his feet, before casting Trunks a suspicious look. Why there? It's on the way and Naji and the guys want to stay there. How long? Not long, maybe a few hours. Fine, Vegeta said gruffly, turning and giving Trunks his back. He wasn't opposed to some fresh air. The ship they were on reeked of the colds. The sooner he could get off it, the better. You can leave now. Alright. Vegeta turned his head a little when he heard the disappointment in Trunks' voice. He instinctively sneered in disgust. Who the fuck knew what that boy expected from him? He sure didn't, nor did he care. Vegeta dropped back down onto the floor, before lifting himself into another handstand. He resumed his push UPS with the other hand this time, as his mind wandered back to the topic not involving Freeza that consumed his thoughts on a regular basis, how he could also achieve the legendary state of the Super Saiyan. Trunks wasn't that much help in this aspect. They had only discussed it once, and it had not gone so well. How did you do it at such a young age? When my master, my friend, when he died at the hands of those monsters, and I found him afterwards, it was a horrible experience. I was so angry, at him, at myself, at everything. It just happened. It just happened. Yeah, I couldn't control it. I didn't even realize it was happening. Typical. What? Of course you would have an emotional response. You are soft. Your fighting is dictated by your ridiculous feelings and emotions. Look, you wanted to know, so I told you. That's how it happened. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I thought you would be angry. Angry, yeah. You know, because I'm stronger than you. I didn't want to make you mad or anything. You know what makes me angry? It's not that you're a Super Saiyan. You have my blood, the royal blood of a Saiyan elite. Of course you have the ability. No, what pisses me off is that you just stood there and watched while Freeza broke me in half, and you didn't do a goddamn thing. You could have killed him right there, but you didn't. Why? Silence. That's what I thought. You're spineless. All the power in the universe through your veins, at your fingertips, right at your disposal, and you didn't use it when you should have. You should have killed him when you had the chance, you imbecile. You don't understand. Damn right I don't understand. Now get the hell out of my sight. You disgust me. Irritated and now officially off his game, Vegeta dropped down again. He sat down cross-legged against the wall and sighed, running one hand down his face. Until he made his transformation, Trunks was the best shot they had at defeating Freeza. He just hoped the kid was up for it. Trunks took in a deep breath of fresh air on the new planet. It was muggy and dark, but damn, it was nice to be off that ship. They'd been in there for months, it felt like. He stretched his arms out a little bit before looking up ahead where his father was standing at the edge of the cliff where they landed the ship. Vegeta was wishing he had a scouter as he took in the smell of this particular atmosphere. He glanced over to his side as Trunks came to stand by him. Do you smell that? Trunks sniffed, and shook his head. I don't smell anything. Why, what do you smell? Vegeta looked down over the edge of the cliff, staying silent. He thought he caught a familiar smell of burning flesh, the clear indicator of an ongoing purge, but he couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. There were small cities down there. He could make out some aliens moving about. Why, then, was he catching the smell of death in the air? Nothing, Vegeta finally answered, frowning in thought. Something was wrong. His instincts were telling him so. He glanced up at the night sky and studied the stars, his eyes narrowing as Trunks watched him curiously. What do you guys think? Nice and simple little planet, huh? Yeah, Trunks answered a little absent-mindedly, as he wondered what his father was thinking about. He glanced back at the aliens who were slowly climbing out of the ship. You guys been here before? Of course, Trunks, Naji politely answered. Pyrus is my home planet. It's a piece of shit planet, Vegeta said matter-of-factly, his back still to the now offended aliens. He lowered his gaze and peered down at the cities below. Let's just get on with this. Vegeta led the way down as they all climbed down the side of the cliff. When Trunks asked why they couldn't just fly into town and see where to get the materials they needed, Vegeta ignored him. The truth was that he had no idea who was on this planet, and he felt severely uninformed without his scouter to tell him where the highest power levels were. Trunks had shown him how to sense ki, but he was still not fully comfortable with the technique. Coupled with the fact that there was one extremely powerful and influential alien tyrant out there who wanted their heads, Vegeta thought it was wise not to draw attention to themselves. Everyone silently followed his lead until they were finally in the first city. Vegeta raised a fist and everyone suddenly stopped walking. The prince cocked his head to one side and stood that way for several moments. Alright, Vegeta finally said, turning around to face the group. You blue freaks. You know this planet. Go find the proper supplies for the ship and the right amount of food. Meet us back in the ship within the hour, or I purge this entire planet and save each of you for last. So don't suddenly develop courage and try something cute with me. Understand? None of the aliens looked very happy, but they nodded and walked off to do as they were told. Trunks watched as they walked into the city, chatting amongst themselves. The further away they got, the clearer it became that they were genuinely happy to be home. Come here, kid. Trunks instantly jogged over to his father. What is it? Someone is on this planet, Vegeta bluntly announced, unconsciously clenching and unclenching his gloved hands into fists. And they're close. What? I can smell them. What? Trunks repeated, confused as he stared at his father. He couldn't help but wonder if maybe he'd given his father a concussion with their earlier sparring session. He was making no sense. We're barely on the fringes of the city and you mean to tell me that you can smell there it is. You hear that? Vegeta asked, cocking his head to one side again as he tried zeroing in on the sound. Hear what? Scouters, Vegeta growled, both fists clenched tightly now. Sweat started forming on his brow as his brain worked rapidly. Only the cold army war scouters. They were in the south sector. No one in the cold army was down in the south sector. Freeza had barely started getting his feet wet in the east sector. There was no reason for anyone to be there. Unless they were looking for him and Trunks, of course. I don't hear anything. Shut up and keep your power down. We're staying on the ground for this. Follow me, Vegeta ordered. Trunks couldn't get another word in before Vegeta took off running in the shadows of the city. Trunks immediately went after him, though he got more than a few dirty glares from Vegeta over how loud he was being. Trunks took a deep breath and tried his best to make his steps light like his father's, but it was harder than it looked. The ground wasn't anything he'd ever walked on before. It almost felt like patched together glass. How Vegeta could walk on it so lightly, Trunks had no idea. Vegeta rounded a corner out of sight with Trunks on his heels. Trunks nearly ran into him when Vegeta came to an abrupt stop. The prince shot him a look that could have killed, and Trunks gave him a silent apologetic shrug in response. Vegeta rolled his eyes, before motioning with his head to follow him. Trunks did, and after a few steps, a horrible feeling of deja vu washed over him as he finally smelled what his father had picked up almost half a mile away. Vegeta leaned up against the stone wall of a building, where he became completely blanketed by the cover of darkness. Trunks followed his example. Do you sense anyone? Vegeta asked him using his mind. Trunks tried sensing someone out, but then shook his head. No one except the natives with their low ki. He frowned and then added, but I can smell it now. Fire. And flesh. There's the light there. See it? Trunks looked and did see the flickering of flames behind the next building. The coloring was strange, a mixture of blue and red. Yeah, I see it now. Slowly and quietly, they both approached. It was then that Trunks finally saw how his father always managed to sneak up on him. The man was completely silent and methodical in his movements. It was clear he'd done this many times before. Vegeta stopped at the edge of the building. He squatted down and Trunks leaned over him, both of them trying to listen. They could hear voices now. Who is it? Trunks asked telepathically, glancing down at his father. Do you recognize them? Vegeta raised a fist to his mouth. He listened closely. He heard what they were talking about in a language he understood. He then heard a woman start screaming. He scowled and sent back, I don't, but they're definitely Frieza's men. How do you know? Vegeta cast him a look of disgust, before shaking his head and standing up. I know. I make it my business to know, he sneered mentally. Unlike you, I guess. Do you know how many there are? The screaming suddenly intensified. Without a word of warning, Vegeta took off around the corner of the building. At once, blasts started firing. Trunks ran over, but he was immediately distracted by the sight of a pile of burning bodies right there in the dark alley. His stomach churned with impending nausea at the gruesome scene. He looked over and saw more dead bodies on the ground, dead by his father's hand in a matter of seconds. Trunks recognized their armor and their scouters. Looking up, he managed to see his father haul the last soldier, a purple-scaled alien with completely white eyes, off an alien woman he'd been close to raping. Vegeta kicked him hard in the side of the head, shattering the scouter to pieces. The soldier yelped in surprise, crawling back before scrambling up to his feet as he quickly yanked his trousers up. Vegeta, he gasped in realization, only now seeming to notice that everyone who was with him was dead. His bravado was melting by the second. You know of me. Good. Then you know I'm not patient, so answer this. What the hell are you doing here? Vegeta demanded, raising his hand towards the alien in warning while Trunks gently helped the female alien sit up behind him. She was a dark blue like Naji, and was mostly just shaken up, to Trunks' relief. The soldier's bravado was suddenly back, as he scoffed. I don't answer to you. Wrong answer. Vegeta fired a ki blast that hit the soldier right in the crotch. The alien howled in agony and crumpled to the ground. He rolled over and screamed into the dirt in pain, but that was short-lived. Vegeta kicked him hard in the ribs and sent him crashing into the next building. The alien soldier was writhing in pain, and quickly found himself pinned down by Vegeta's boot. Last chance to live, Vegeta taunted, leaning down closer. What are you doing here, weakling? Freeza sent us, the soldier practically whimpered. Trunks frowned as he helped the alien woman stand. He motioned for her to run away. She didn't need to be told twice. Why to this planet? Vegeta snarled, driving his boot mercilessly into the soldier's throat until he saw blood being coughed up. Only then did he loosen the pressure. And it was only by a little bit. The soldier coughed roughly and tried getting Vegeta's boot off him. I've got all fucking day to get answers out of you, and believe me, I will make your death as slow and as miserable as possible if you don't start scouting nearby planets, the soldier spat out. What? He knew you heading to Earth. Trunks and Vegeta both practically yelled. What? Hacked into ship's system. Sent everyone who was left to all the nearby planets. He smiled a bloody smile. You can run, but ya can't hide, Vegeta. Gonna purge all these planets, Earth too, till you ain't got no choice but to fight Freeza and die. Only one dying here is you, fool, Vegeta growled, raising his knee up chest level, his boot right over the alien's face. He then brought his foot down hard. Trunks looked away so he wouldn't see. While he had grown more comfortable with the violence of the time he was in, there were just some things he wasn't ever going to feel comfortable seeing. He finally looked back when he felt Vegeta walking over to one of the other fallen men. The prince crouched down and took the soldier's red scouter off. He turned it over a bit in his hands, inspecting its condition. He frowned and cursed under his breath as Trunks came to stand right next to him. The teenager inspected the blood now staining Vegeta's dark blue trousers from the knees down, as well as his previously clean white boots. You could have used your key and spared yourself the mess, you know, Trunks told him. I gave that piece of shit what he deserved, Vegeta said, no remorse in his voice. Because of what he was going to do to that girl. Vegeta stayed quiet for a few seconds, and then changed the topic. They know where we're going, he said, more to himself than to Trunks as he slipped the scouter on. Yeah, seems like it, Trunks said with a frown as Vegeta stood up. Their ships must have gotten faster for them to already be here, Vegeta reasoned, his dark eyes taking in the dead men on the ground, before he glanced over at the raging fire and the bodies burning in it. His mind was raging just as much as the flames, trying to piece together what Freeza was planning. He knew about Trunks' strength. If he was trying to draw them out, it was because he felt like he could defeat Trunks. His earlier anxiety came back, tightening in his stomach. Finally, Vegeta dusted off his armor, shook his head, and mused out loud, we cannot go to Earth anymore. This is a trap. We're being set up for something, but I don't know what. So what are you saying? Earth is probably infested by now. Freeza might even be there waiting. If Freeza is there, then we have to go. Trunks cut in with a sense of urgency that got Vegeta's attention. If Freeza is on Earth, there is no doubt that the planet has already been purged and adequately prepared to tilt a battle in his favor. It would not be smart to walk right into no. We're going to Earth. Right now. Vegeta turned to face Trunks directly, more curious than angry over Trunks challenging his authority. He crossed his arms and stared hard at the teenager. What is your investment with this planet, boy? He demanded. Trunks started, before falling into thought as he quickly tried thinking of what to say. Finally, he decided on a strategy. I just don't want to run away from Freeza, like cowards. Vegeta lowered his arms and squared his shoulders, his gaze darkening. Are you calling me a coward? No. All I'm saying is there's no point to avoiding him. He wants us, so let's go find him. You aren't ready to fight Freeza. Yes, I am, and I'll prove it. I'm not going to run from him, and neither should you. Vegeta growled low in his throat, before snarling, I don't run from anyone, boy, and don't you forget it. He turned and marched off, missing the relief on Trunks' face. We are going to Earth at once to settle this. They finally got back to the ship, where the other aliens were already waiting for them. Vegeta passed Trunks a look, and the teenager stepped forward to talk to the aliens over what supplies they found. Vegeta hung back and observed as the aliens showed Trunks where the fuel reserves were. He turned around and gave them his back while he stood on the ramp that led down to the planet they were on. I have no idea how they could have hacked into the system, Naji told Trunks. I just know the basics about this stuff. That's a whole deeper level of understanding, though Freeza has the best technical staff in the universe. We should have probably anticipated it. I'm sorry that we didn't. Yeah, Trunks said with a nod, before smiling appreciatively. That's alright though. Thanks for your help. Don't mention it. Good luck. Thanks. Vegeta watched from the corner of his eye as the aliens hesitantly walked past him down the ramp. Come on. We gotta go, Trunks called out to him. Vegeta stayed silent, his eyes narrowed as he stared at the aliens who were walking away. Father, don't do it, Trunks pleaded, just as Vegeta was about to raise his hand. The prince clenched his hands into fists, grinding his teeth as resentment washed over him. His natural authority was granted by physical superiority. The boy was stronger than him though, and so there was little Vegeta could do here to challenge him. Though that wasn't going to last forever, Vegeta resolved with fierce determination. He then quietly turned around without killing the retreating aliens, walking up the ramp and past Trunks without giving the kid a glance. Trunks watched him and sighed, before pulling up the ramp. For better or worse, it was time to go home. They were close to Earth now. Trunks was feeling excited, anxious, and a little sick. He and his father had eaten the meat that Naji and his fellow aliens had brought on board, and Trunks was disgusted as his father ravenously tore into the raw meat, bloody and all. After some back and forth banter about balls dropping and learning how to eat like a man, Trunks was finally goaded into tasting some of the raw meat. It was disgusting and almost made him vomit. His father got a good, hearty laugh out of it, but all Trunks got out of that experience was a bad stomachache. Vegeta was sitting down in the control room now behind Trunks as he tinkered with the scouter he'd picked up on Pyrus. It was a newer model than any he'd seen before, confirming his suspicions that the soldiers he'd run into were rooks. Freeza was already recruiting new men to fill out his ranks. Vegeta scowled as he stared at the advanced circuitry of the scouter. You figure that thing out yet? Yes. That's clearly why I am still staring at it, Vegeta remarked sarcastically. He touched a piece of the circuit with his tool and immediately pulled his hand back when voltage shot through and shocked him. Let me see. Maybe I can do something with it. Vegeta scoffed as Trunks approached him. What the hell do you know about scouters? Not much, Trunks admitted as he squatted down in front of Vegeta. But I know a couple things about electronics. Vegeta handed Trunks the scouter. The teenager took it and studied it closely, his blue eyes narrowed in concentration while Vegeta waited impatiently. Well, he finally snapped. He growled and snatched the scouter out of Trunks' hands, not even giving the teenager a chance to respond. Talking about, you know electronics. You don't know anything. Stop wasting my goddamn time. No, wait, Trunks said, snatching the scouter back. I think it's right here. See, he showed Vegeta the scouter circuitry and pointed to a part the prince hadn't tried. I was going to try that next, Vegeta grumbled, snatching the scouter back. Trunks smiled and stood up, going back over to the controls as his father muttered curses under his breath. Vegeta snapped the scouter shut once he synchronized it properly, and then slipped it on. He watched as the light flickered on while it attempted to make a link with his old scouter. He crossed his arms over his chest and stared. After a few seconds, the scouter flashed that no link could be made. As soon as it flashed the message, Trunks whispered, "No, that can't be right." Vegeta looked up. "What is it?" Trunks didn't answer. He was standing at the controls, leaning over them as he stared through the glass window out into space. Vegeta got up to his feet and marched over. "I asked you a question," he growled, standing next to Trunks and looking at the controls. Everything seemed on target. He glanced up at the glass window. Nothing seemed out of place to him. He looked back at his son, who had visibly paled. "What is it?" he demanded again. "It's not there," Trunks mumbled, looking like he was in a complete daze. "What's not there?" Vegeta pressed. "Earth. It's not there." Vegeta rechecked the coordinates, and then looked up. The kid was right. The planet was supposed to be right in front of them now, but all he saw was space dust, a couple of distant planets, and a sun past them. "That can't be right," Vegeta said, not even realizing he was quoting Trunks verbatim. This ship would never have calculated the coordinates if there was no planet there. "Unless the planet was destroyed after it got the coordinates," Trunks said, leaning heavily over the control panel. His knees suddenly felt weak. "Nonsense," Vegeta scoffed. "The ship would have informed us immediately. It is constantly recalculating the coordinates to ensure that the trajectory is correct. But you fucking see it, don't you? It's not there." Vegeta stared out the window, ignoring his son as he peered closer. Trunks turned around and leaned back against the panel, bringing one hand up to cover his eyes as he tried his very best to keep it together and not have a mental breakdown in front of his father. Completely oblivious of what this meant to Trunks, Vegeta tilted his head to one side and crossed his arms over his chest, staring at the stretch of space in front of them. "Ha! How bizarre. That can't be right." "It is right dash, no," Vegeta said firmly. "Something is not right here. Look." Trunks frowned and turned around. "What do you mean?" Vegeta pointed. "The system is symmetric." "What dash you see? There is a pattern of constellations here," Vegeta said, levitating into the air so he could point right on the glass. "And it is mirrored exactly here in reverse." His hand started moving as he traced the dividing line, slowly drawing out a spherical shape. "All across here. The constellations are symmetric around this edge, and then there is a hole here in the middle. I've never once seen anything like this in all my time of space travel. This simply cannot be right." Trunks blinked as he stared at what his father was talking about. He would have never even noticed such a thing. "It's a shield?" he asked hopefully. "A shield, or a mirror of some kind," Vegeta said, crossing his arms again as he descended back to the floor. "The planet is still there, but somehow, someone managed to hide it well," he said, unable to keep the surprise out of his voice. "Anyone who couldn't tell would turn back. Guess they don't want us to land there, huh?" "Yes, but who is they?" as the question dash. Both of them were suddenly knocked to the floor as an explosion violently rocked the ship. Alarms and red lights started flashing as the ship picked up dangerous speed. "What's happening?" "What do you mean, what's fucking happening?" "We're under attack, you idiot dash." Another explosion hit more violently than before, making Vegeta and Trunks both instinctively cover their heads as the spaceship started being torn apart. "We have to get out of this ship," Trunks yelled over the alarms. "We don't know how close we are to the planet," Vegeta yelled back, somehow managing to get back up to his feet. His scouter suddenly exploded on his face, making him fall back in shock as Trunks ascended to his Super Saiyan state in a matter of seconds, the golden light exploding in the control room. Not having seen the transformation since the trials, Vegeta stared in stunned amazement at the powerhouse that was his son, completely forgetting for the moment the situation they found themselves in. "We have to take the chance," Trunks yelled, going over to his father. He tried grabbing Vegeta to lift him and clear right out of the ship, when Vegeta roughly shoved him away. "I don't need your help," Vegeta shouted at him, getting back up to his feet. "Now isn't the time for this," Trunks screamed at him. "We have to dash." Trunks abruptly stopped and turned back to the glass, his senses picking up something coming right at them. Vegeta followed his line of sight and frowned. They both stared at what looked like space and constellations. Vegeta finally felt it too, and growled, "What in the dash?" Trunks suddenly tackled Vegeta down to the floor right as a powerful, spiraled, blue energy beam blasted through the glass, a beam that would have killed his father instantly had it made contact. That was all he had time to do before the ship finally crash-landed, and then viciously exploded, lost in a sea of metal, fire, and smoke. Vegeta stirred sometime later and groaned. He slowly opened his eyes, which were stinging with smoke. He was buried under metal pieces. Grumbling to himself that he was tired of this shit always happening to him, he went to dig his way out before hissing as a raw pain ripped through him, his hand going to his stomach. When he brought it up, he could see that his white glove was stained with blood. "Trunks?" he weakly sent out. He didn't hear anything back, and slowly started shoving the metal pieces off him. "Great. Just great. I knew we shouldn't have come to this fucking planet," he irritably thought to himself, emerging from the debris at last. He coughed roughly, on his hands and knees, only now becoming aware of the blood running down his face. He stubbornly wiped it away, squinting up at the sudden bright light of the sun. "Trunks!" he sent out with more force than before. "Yeah, I'm here," Trunks' weak and pained voice sounded in Vegeta's mind. "You alright?" "Never been better," Vegeta sent back, wincing in pain as he tried getting up to his feet. He was immediately forced back down to his knees by a strong hand on his shoulder. I don't think so. You better stay down. I don't want to be the one that has to hurt you, but I will if I have to, an unfamiliar voice said from behind him. Vegeta tensed when he felt what could only be a gun or rifle of some kind press up right behind his head. Hey, look, Vegeta gasped out, falling forward on his hands and knees again and squeezing his eyes shut. I'm not here for trouble, alright? I can't even see right now. I need help, he pleaded, as his right hand suddenly closed around a small, sharp, ragged shard of metal. Yeah, well we'll see about dash. Vegeta suddenly spun around, knocking the rifle out of the way with his left hand. In one swift motion, he got up to his feet and buried the shard of metal right into the man's throat with his right hand. The bald man sputtered and staggered back, and would have collapsed had Vegeta not phased in right behind him. Vegeta wrapped his left arm around his enemy's throat from behind, wedging the shard in further as the smaller man tried in vain to escape. Krillin! No, a young voice screamed. Vegeta immediately raised his right hand out over Krillin's shoulder, forcing him to turn with him like a shield. He saw a young and horrified boy watching the gruesome scene with wide eyes, holding his own rifle that seemed way too big for him. Vegeta offered him a maniacal smirk, his hand starting to glow with ki. He'll bleed out in precisely 24.5 seconds, Vegeta taunted, tightening his grip mercilessly around Krillin's throat. Krillin could only make gurgling sounds as he desperately tried to claw off Vegeta's arm, which was quickly staining red with his blood, but it was an iron rod around his throat. Vegeta hardly noticed his struggling as he continued, I suggest you get lost, kid, unless you want some of the same. Let him go, the boy screamed, dropping his rifle as an explosion of blue ki suddenly surrounded him in his rage. Vegeta raised an eyebrow in surprise, eyeing the boy up and down. He was a small thing, but he was incredibly powerful. Vegeta heard a distant, Gohan, don't. He looked over out of the corner of his eye, trying to get a gauge on how many of them there were, when Gohan suddenly charged him. Vegeta immediately released Krillin and could barely form a proper defense against the boy, partly due to his own injuries slowing him down, but mostly due to the shock that a young boy would dare attack him head-on. Gohan had him reeling backwards when Vegeta finally regained his composure, catching the boy by surprise with a hard knee to the stomach that instantly dropped Gohan to the wreckage. Not giving the boy a chance to recover, Vegeta kicked him hard in the ribs, knocking the air right out of him and making Gohan yell out in pain. Stumbling back, Vegeta spit out a mouthful of blood, using every bit of willpower not to double over in pain as his vision blurred. He tried desperately to regroup when Trunks suddenly reappeared out of nowhere on his side. The teenager effortlessly blocked a ki blast that was aimed for Vegeta, sending it off into the distance. Took you long enough, Vegeta coughed out while Trunks looked Gohan over in concern as the boy struggled to get up. Trunks then looked up to see that they were surrounded. He didn't recognize everyone, but he could guess from what Bulma had told him. Trunks wiped the blood from his own face, and then raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. He didn't want to show off his strength if he didn't have to. Look, guys. We're not here to hurt any of you. You almost killed our friend, a shirtless three-eyed man yelled as he hovered in midair. We're not letting you take our planet, a long-haired warrior with a scar down his face shouted as he knelt next to Krillin, who was somehow miraculously sitting up. Vegeta stared at him in shock. How the hell was he alive? Trunks pleaded, no, please, just listen to me. You guys don't understand. Vegeta leaned back to back against Trunks, turning his head a little. You take Three Eyes and Scarface, and I'll take the boy and the Namek, he ordered. No, Trunks hissed, looking over his shoulder to see that Piccolo was in midair, eyes locked with Vegeta. The Saiyan sneered up at him in response. Trunks felt his father's body heat start to skyrocket behind him as Vegeta's ki and power began to surge. Everyone, all together, Piccolo boomed out. Almost immediately, all the Z-fighters followed suit and started to power up as well as they prepared to fight back. On my mark, Vegeta snarled. Trunks growled and was about to power up as well to his full capacity, to neutralize the volatile situation before it got further out of hand. His words were not working. If they saw how strong he really was, then he could force them to listen. He was literally under 2 seconds from transforming into a Super Saiyan when a new voice sounded out. Stop! Back down, everyone, now. Everyone looked over as a new figure emerged. Trunks could feel everyone's power level dwindle a bit in response, though it was clear that the Earth Warriors were all prepared to fight on the drop of a dime. Vegeta, however, powered down completely, staring blankly at the newcomer. After a few tense seconds, the prince was finally the one who broke the silence. Raditz. Addicted to this story? Infinite Novel has plenty more. Subscribe and stay tuned. Raditz stared at Vegeta, hardly believing his eyes. He had thought for sure that his prince was dead. His gaze shifted over to Trunks and his eyes narrowed, before he looked over the rest of the destroyed ship. Finally, he walked over to them. He glanced up at Piccolo and gave him a motion to back down. The Namek growled. He would never get used to taking orders from the Saiyan, but he nodded to the others to let Raditz handle the newcomers. Raditz spared his nephew a brief glance. The kid was sitting now, wincing as he rubbed his stomach. Raditz would have berated him for his foolish charge, but he was beyond impressed that the boy had briefly held his own with Vegeta. He turned his attention to the prince, gave him a nod of respect, and then asked, "Is it only you two?" Vegeta nodded, wiping the blood off his face. Raditz frowned. "Where's Nappa?" "Dead," Vegeta informed him bluntly. "Freeza?" Vegeta shook his head, and put one forearm on Trunks' back as he leaned against him a little, his other arm going protectively around his stomach. He looked over to where Piccolo was descending. They were still surrounded, and he didn't like it. "You've aligned yourself with these weaklings, Raditz?" Vegeta spat out in disgust. Raditz hesitated in answering, before finally saying, "Let's get you both looked at." "That was a hell of a landing. Then we can talk in private," he added, glancing at Piccolo with a scowl. Vegeta grunted his agreement to the plan, as Trunks spoke up. "Where is Kakarot?" Raditz's gaze darkened as he looked over at Trunks. "Like I said," he sneered angrily. "We will talk in private." "Raditz," Vegeta barked harshly, drawing Raditz's attention. "This boy's name is Trunks, and he is my son. That makes him a first-class Saiyan elite. You will show him the proper respect from now on." Vegeta left the threat behind his words unspoken. Trunks couldn't help but smile a little. "What?" Raditz asked blankly, looking over at Trunks in disbelief. He studied the teenager in amazement, finally seeing his resemblance to Vegeta. So his little slip when they were having drinks hadn't been a lie. "How is that possible?" he asked in bewilderment, looking back at Vegeta in clear shock. "Don't ask," Vegeta grumbled, looking down at himself. He gingerly removed his arm from his stomach, only to see his arm soaked in blood. Raditz frowned as he saw Vegeta's injuries. He turned around and scanned over the warriors standing around them, before his gaze finally settled on Yamcha. "Do you have any more sens of beans?" he demanded. "No, I gave Krillin our last one," Yamcha said as Krillin stood up next to him. The smaller man rubbed at his throat and looked over at Vegeta warily. "Raditz," Piccolo's voice sounded out. Raditz sighed through his nose in exasperation and looked over at the Namek who was glaring at him. "What do you want, green man?" Raditz demanded peevishly. "Who are these two?" Piccolo demanded, matching Raditz's tone. "You seem to know them. This is Vegeta. He is the prince of all Saiyans. You will all show him his due respect," Raditz growled, making eye contact with everyone who was there to make sure that he was clear. "And this," he said, looking back at Trunks, his eyes a mixture of bitterness and begrudged respect. "This is his son, Trunks. He is half Saiyan but he is due respect as well, for being son of the prince. They are no threat to us." Piccolo's antenna twitched in agitation as he looked Vegeta and Trunks over. He could barely pick up any key from either of them now, but just a few moments ago when everyone had been powering up, he had been floored at the key signature he sensed from the smaller Saiyan. He was hands down more powerful than Raditz, something which did not sit well with the Namek. Finally, his gaze shifted down to his protege. "Gohan," he barked, startling the young boy. "Let's go back to our post." Gohan scratched his head a little, before peering up at Raditz. "Uncle Raditz," he asked sheepishly. "Go, kid," Raditz ordered, motioning with his chin to follow Piccolo. The little boy slowly got up and went over to get his weapon, before running over to Piccolo. It was only then that Vegeta noticed the boy had a tail. "Kakarot's son?" Vegeta asked, blinking in surprise. Raditz smirked a little. "Yes. The boy has incredible potential." Vegeta grunted, leaning a little more against Trunks' back as his vision blurred. The teenager glanced over his shoulder in concern, but didn't move. This was about as much as his father would let him help him, so he stayed where he was. "Tell me there's a goddamned rejuvenation chamber on this planet," Vegeta grumbled irritably. "No, but they have something better. Come on, we'll go get you two looked at until we can get more senzu beans." Raditz looked over at Yamcha again and barked out, "You, human. Lead the way over to your woman so her medical staff can take care of the prince." Yamcha, Krillin, Tien, and Tietsu all silently exchanged looks while Raditz walked up closer to Vegeta and Trunks. "What are you guys thinking?" Tien asked quietly. Trunks gave them a subtle sidelong glance, listening intently. "Well, Raditz is on our side. And he knows them," Yamcha quietly responded, his voice trailing off with indecision. "Man, the smaller one, the one that's supposedly a prince. That guy is a one-man wrecking crew," Krillin mumbled. "I never got the chance to shoot him with the D-Nad before he was all over me. Thank goodness for senzu beans. Well, just be careful and keep an eye on them for now. Tietsu and I are going back to our post. Might as well stay on their good side since they don't seem to be a threat right now." "Yeah, I'll do the same," Krillin added with a nod. He spared Yamcha a glance, and smiled a little. "Good luck." "Gee, thanks," Yamcha said, not looking at all enthused over being abandoned. "Don't worry, Gaku'll be back soon. He'll know what to do." Yamcha nodded, and swallowed heavily as his friends took to the air. He looked back over to see that the Saiyans were all arguing now. The truth was that he did, in fact, have a few more senzu beans, but after seeing how easily Vegeta had nearly decapitated Krillin, he was keeping his mouth shut about it. So long as Raditz didn't find out, he was in the clear. "I said, I can fucking fly on my own, you imbeciles." Vegeta snarled at both Raditz and Trunks. "Just lead the goddamned way." "Alright," Trunks gave in with a sigh. He reached up and rubbed at his head a little. He had a headache, and a nasty gash on his scalp that was reddening his hair from the crash. The impact had briefly knocked him out, and now he was drained. Needless to say, he wasn't in the mood to argue with his father. "Fine then. Lead the way, human," Raditz ordered. Yamcha frowned but nodded. He turned around and took to the air. Raditz followed him, and then Vegeta, with Trunks bringing up the rear. The teenager trailed his father closely, making sure he was all right and ready to come in if he wasn't. His thoughts though were soon drifting to his mother. If he could convince her that time travel was a real possibility, how long would it take her to build a new time machine? Was he being unrealistic? It had taken her years in his timeline, and that was with more advanced knowledge. But on the flip side, that was also with them both trying their best to equip the surviving humans with weapons. Her efforts had definitely been sidetracked. Well, he reasoned, if push came to shove, she did have a radar for locating the Dragon Balls. Now he just had to convince her to let him use it. About half an hour later, Yamcha landed in front of Capsule Corp. The Saiyans behind him landed soon afterwards. Trunks noted with some concern that there was blood trickling down the back of his father's neck. He had definitely taken the worst of that impact. The teenager then glanced over at the domed building in front of him. In spite of everything, he smiled. The building was pristine compared to what still remained in his time. For the first time in a very long time, Trunks finally felt like he was home. Bulma! Yamcha yelled out, approaching the building. Vegeta bent over and rested his hands on his knees, wincing at the pain from doubling over as he tried getting his breath from the flight. Without the adrenaline of battle, he felt exhausted. Trunks came up next to him and put a comforting hand on his back when Vegeta growled. The prince straightened and batted his son's hand away, sneering at him in disgust before looking to Raditz. "Where the hell are we?" he angrily demanded. "This woman is the smartest and richest woman on the planet," Raditz informed him. "She's proven herself useful. She has a medical station that has become used to Saiyans. I've been there a couple of times, as well as Kakarot's boy. They'll treat your injuries efficiently and thoroughly." HN. Yamcha. They all looked up as Bulma launched herself into her boyfriend's arms. Yamcha wrapped his arms around her and hugged her tightly. She kissed him deeply, and Trunks cringed in disgust. Raditz cleared his throat as she finally pulled away from Yamcha. "I was so worried about you guys," Bulma told her boyfriend, sighing in relief. "I saw that the shield was breached and thought it was that creep Freeza or whatever his name is." "Freeza," Raditz corrected in an irritated voice. "Whatever," Bulma snapped at him, before finally looking over at the two newcomers. She raised an eyebrow curiously. "Who are these two?" she asked, looking Vegeta over first, and then looking at Trunks. The teenager nodded politely to her, even though inside, his heart was aching at the sight of her. Bulma was sporting youthful bangs, her hair pulled back with a red bow. She was radiant. He had never seen his mother without the lines of worry and loss etched into her features. Seeing her now, so inexperienced with the pain and loss of his timeline, both pleased and saddened him. He sighed deeply. He needed to find a way back home. "This is Vegeta. He is the Saiyan prince," Raditz said, gesturing to the prince who was staring at Bulma in a way that was making the beautiful heiress distinctly uncomfortable. "And this is Vegeta's son, Trunks." Bulma blinked when she heard the teenager's name. She looked over at him in surprise, but he averted his gaze, blushing as he did. "They both need medical attention at once," Raditz finished. "You want me to let these two in when I don't even know who they are?" Bulma asked, glaring at Raditz. "What the hell do I look like? Your slave?" Feeling the weight of Vegeta's stare only intensifying after her words, Bulma turned to glare at him too. Putting her hands on her waist, she leaned forward and snapped at him, "And just what are you staring at, Buster? You better take it easy, or you won't be getting any help from Dash." Vegeta released an animalistic snarl from deep in his chest, right before he lunged himself at her. Bulma squealed in terror and fell back, landing sitting down, a feral Saiyan restrained less than a foot away from her now. Trunks had barely managed to grab his father around the waist in time to stop him from literally ripping his mother's throat out. "Whoa, easy, take it easy," Trunks said soothingly, trying his best to calm his father. Truth be told, Trunks' heart was racing. Vegeta might have come to respect him, and perhaps even accept him as his son, but the man's temper was still volatile. Once again, he felt a feeling of dread over this situation that he couldn't quite shake. "Fucking bitch," Vegeta seethed almost rabidly, letting Trunks pull him back only because he was too drained to fight the boy. "Disrespect me again and I'll rip your fucking tongue right out of your mouth, before I take your goddamn head off." "Take it easy," Trunks said again, feeling very much like he was restraining a wild animal. Bulma swallowed heavily, now hiding behind Yamcha, who was just as scared as she was. She saw no bluffing in Vegeta's crazed eyes. "Well," Raditz said, not able to help his smirk. "Now that we got introductions out of the way, Vegeta and Trunks need medical attention. The faster we get on with it, the faster we'll be out of your hair." Bulma meekly pointed over to the right to the building she had added to their compound as a result of the intense training her friends had undergone recently. It seemed like every other day, someone was getting banged up, so it was useful to have. "Medical wing is over there. I already had everyone prepped, just in case." Please don't kill anyone." Raditz nodded and walked over to a side building. Vegeta elbowed Trunks in the chest hard to force him to let go, which the teenager immediately did. Vegeta gave Bulma one last murderous glare before turning and walking behind Raditz. Trunks offered Bulma an apologetic look and followed after his father. When they were out of sight, Bulma punched Yamcha as hard as she could in his arm. "Yoch! What the heck was that for, B? For not doing anything to protect me from that psychopath, you jerk." Bulma yelled at him. "Were you just going to stand there and watch him kill me?" "Of course not," Yamcha sheepishly said, chuckling nervously. "Who the hell are they, anyways?" Bulma demanded, looking over at the departing Saiyans. "Are they on our side?" Yamcha looked over as well, and sighed. "I sure hope so." Raditz was standing at a window a few hours later, arms crossed over his armor as he stared out at nothing in particular. His brows furrowed at the thought of the last year, and he sighed. "The transmission from Zarbon came through on your scouter," He said that he had pinpointed where you and Nappa were. They had the whole army looking for both of you. Did they manage to capture you? Vegeta grunted. Got the Ginyu Force in on it. By then, it was just me. They killed Nappa? I killed Nappa. Raditz glanced over at Vegeta in surprise. The prince avoided his gaze and stared off to the side. He was only useful for his loyalty, and that ran out. So I took care of the problem, he said gruffly, his tone emotionless. He looked down and shook his head, running one hand up through his hair as he added in a low voice, whole thing was a fucking disaster, starting back on Rithika. Raditz snorted and looked back out. Sounds like it. Least you were able to handle the tough bastards. How did you escape if Zarbon captured you? The kid was useful. Trunks? He's stronger than he looks, Vegeta grumbled. He leaned his head back against the wall, reaching down and covering his now bandaged stomach with his hand. So you got the transmission. And then? I landed on Earth shortly after that. I assumed that you all were dead. I found out my brother not only was alive, he was doing well on this planet. He was married, had a kid. The planet was in peace. There was nothing for me to go back to, and I wasn't going to kill the only other full-blooded Saiyan I knew existed, or his son. So you joined them. What else was I supposed to do? Purge the planet? Then what? I had nothing else, and I had no choice. I joined my kin. I knew Freeza would come eventually. I've been trying to prepare everyone here. I've been training them. I trained my brother for some time, while the Namek trained my nephew. What's a Namek doing on this planet anyways? Heh, your guess is as good as mine. I don't like the overgrown lizard. But anyways, I took over training the boy for some time afterwards. Then I tried training the humans, but there is little hope for them in a true battle. Vegeta crossed his arms over his chest and looked back at Raditz, who was still looking out the window. Where is Kakarot? He's receiving some special training by the gods, or some bullshit like that. Something about how he deserves the opportunity for elite training, for the good of the Earth, all that other crap. He'll be back eventually. The Earth Shield. Was that your idea? No, that was Bulma's. Who? The blue-haired girl you tried killing outside. She thought of that idea, designed it and implemented it. Vegeta snorted in disbelief, rolling his eyes. A woman coming up with something like that? Give me a fucking break. She did, Raditz said, before smirking over at Vegeta. I'm guessing it worked? Vegeta scowled. It was decent. Only a trained eye would notice its presence. Raditz nodded and looked away again. She also designed the weapons the boy and the bald short man had. She calls it the DNAD, DNA Destroyer. It's a needle that injects the stuff that reacts badly with any DNA that isn't human. It isn't painful but it completely paralyzes you. I tried it, and the Namek tried it, and the boy tried it. It worked on all of us. We gave the weapons to them because the boy is inexperienced in battle, and the bald man is simply a pathetic warrior. Vegeta's eyebrows scrunched together in confusion and thought. She designed all of that? Yes. She's a self-proclaimed genius but all she's done is back it up with results like that. She's useful. They all are. Vegeta was silent for a while, mulling over the information. Finally, he shook his head. Trunks eliminated King Cold and Cooler. He what? Raditz gasped out in surprise, looking at his prince with wide eyes. Vegeta nodded curtly. Told you. He's stronger than he looks. In any case, Freeza is planning something. I don't know what, but we stopped on a planet on the way here, and he's got men in this sector already. It's only a matter of time. Raditz looked back out the window as he sighed. We've all gotten stronger here. But it's not enough, he growled low in his throat out of frustration. Trunks is the only chance we have, but I don't think he's ready, Vegeta said, shaking his head. Freeza knows how strong he is. He will compensate then, I'm guessing. If we all work together, we should be able to stand a chance. Vegeta frowned, and said nothing. He suddenly felt exhausted. It certainly did seem that working together was perhaps their only hope. About an hour later, Bulma was digging in her fridge for a snack. She was trying to decide between a slice of her mother's heavenly chocolate cake or some taffy apple salad, when she felt something strange. Looking over her shoulder, she squealed in surprise when she saw Trunks standing there. Hey, easy, Trunks said, raising his hands up. He gave her a gentle smile, hoping it would put her at ease. I just wanted something to drink. Is that all right? Bulma released a deep breath, her hand over her heart as she looked at him curiously. Finally she nodded. Sure. We have whatever you, aliensians, might want. I think. Trunks gave a carefree shrug. He wasn't really thirsty. He had gotten stitched up, and had spent the rest of the time tracking his father's key signature along with Raditz. Finally, he felt Raditz leave his father's temporary room in the medical wing, and then felt the prince's key drop to a low buzz, the indicator that he had fallen asleep. It was now or never. Anything you have is fine. Who said I was serving you? Bulma asked with more than a little bit of attitude. Trunks' smile spread. Right. I'll just get myself some water. Bulma moved back a little, forgetting her snack. She watched a little warily as the teenager went about serving himself a glass of water. Finally, something got her attention, and she tilted her head to the side a little. That's a Capsule Corporation jacket. Trunks raised his glass and looked down at it. He nodded, before chugging the water down. But I've never seen it before. Her voice trailed off in confusion. Trunks lowered his glass and put it on the counter. He looked over at his mother and sighed. I need to tell you something, but I don't want you to freak out, Trunks told her calmly. Bulma took a nervous step back away from him, and he raised his hands again. I'm not going to hurt you, I promise, on my life. Okay, Bulma said, inwardly cursing her boyfriend. Why the hell wasn't he there? She had psychotic Saiyans way too close to her, but at least this one in front of her seemed civil. In fact, there was something about him that made her want to trust him, though she wasn't quite convinced if she should. I am actually from this planet. Bulma blinked at him. What? I'm from this planet. I was born and raised on Earth. But I'm not from this time. I'm from the future. 22, maybe 23 years into the future. I'm not quite sure of the exact date. That's impossible, Bulma snorted, looking at him like he was insane. There is no such thing as time travel. Yes, there is. You created a time machine, and I used it to go back in time. I what? You created a time machine, and I dash. Alright, you know what? You clearly hurt your head worse than you think. I don't have time for this dash. Your name is Bulma Briefs. You met Goku when you were 16 years old. You were trying to gather all of the Dragon Balls to wish for a perfect boyfriend. You have bachelor degrees in mathematics, computer science, and mechanical engineering, just because they were fun to get. You have master degrees and PhDs in both electrical engineering and aerospace engineering. You are the heiress to the world's largest fortune in Capsule Corporation. Your favorite ice cream flavor is chocolate. Your favorite movie is Dash. Please stop, Bulma said in a weak voice, staring at him with wide and frightened eyes. You're freaking me out. I knew you in the future, Trunks mumbled, sitting down heavily at the table in the kitchen. He ran his hand through his hair, kept it there, and sighed. I wasn't supposed to come back to this time. I went too far back. There was silence for a while, before he heard the chair pull out next to him. Bulma sat down in the chair and looked at him. What time were you supposed to go back to? A little further along than we are now. Trunks lowered his hand and looked over at her. Is there any way you can help me? I need to get home. My mother is worried sick about me. I don't know how I can help you. I would need some time to even think of an approach to a time machine, and then who knows how long to build it and make it fully operational. A project of that scale could take years. Trunks cleared his throat. Is there any chance I could, maybe use the Dragon Balls? Why are you asking me? It's not like I own the Dragon Balls. No, but you do own a Dragon Ball locator. Bulma bit her bottom lip, looking the teenager next to her over. At the genuine desperation that he was struggling to contain in his eyes, Bulma's features softened and she gave him a small smile. I'll get back to you on it. I can't just give it out to anyone, Yeah, I understand, Trunks said, trying hard not to sound as disappointed as he felt. Hey, don't worry. I'll do my best to help you get home. Thanks, you're welcome. Besides, I like you a hell of a lot more than I like that other guy you're with. Trunks smiled tiredly and nodded. She reached out and patted his arm. It'll all work out. It always does. You'll see. He sighed. He sure as hell hoped so. He wants to use the Dragon Balls, Bulma whispered, crossing her arms. She and Yamcha had both peeked into the rooms the two Saiyan newcomers were occupying in the medical wing, and they were both asleep. Now at the far end, they were conversing in hushed tones. I'm not really sure what to do. What does he want to wish for with the Dragon Balls? I promised him I wouldn't tell anyone. I'm sorry, but his explanation isn't bad or anything. I mean, I guess I could give him the radar-B. You can't. If he has that radar, then he can find the Dragon Balls and make any wish he wants. How do you know he's not playing you, and just lie to you when he actually wants to wish for something bad? This kid isn't like that. I know he's not like that. I don't know, Bulma. I'm not sure I like this idea. Maybe he's just a really good con man or something. He knew way too much about me. You're the most famous woman on the planet. All anyone has to do is Google you and get your life story. No, he knew things. And he was the one who even brought up the Dragon Balls. He already knew about the wish he could make. So, that doesn't make him trustworthy, I guess. Look, let's just wait until Goku gets back. I already have a hard enough time trusting Raditz without these two here now. They are all stronger than all of us, so we're just trying to stay on their good side. Goku said we could trust Raditz. Yeah, but Goku didn't say anything about these two new guys. Right, alright, I'll talk to Goku about it when he gets back. That sounds good. Goku will know what to do. I hope you're right. I'm going to go get some work done. Can you stick around until these guys wake up and leave? Of course, babe. Come on, I'll walk with you. Vegeta heard their voices fade out as they walked away. He was lying on his side in bed, staring at the wall and giving his back to the door. His eyes were wide as he slowly blinked. He had tried sleeping since he hadn't gotten much of it recently, and since no one currently on the planet was a threat to him, he managed all of about 30 minutes before waking up again. He wasn't used to this soft bed, and he was in unfamiliar territory that had his hearing oversensitive to protect himself. Raditz had gone off to get him a senza bean, so he could do nothing but stay there and wait for him. He had tried to fall asleep again to take advantage of the rare downtime, but was stirred out of his restless slumber when he heard the whispers of the humans. Dragon Balls, huh? Any wish he wanted. Slowly, a smirk spread over Vegeta's face. Raditz looked in Trunks' room through the little glass panel on the door. The kid was out cold, one arm draped over his eyes as he softly snored. Being on a real bed after so long was unreal for him, and he had surrendered to his exhaustion and his splitting headache completely. Raditz walked back into Vegeta's room. "He's down for the count." Vegeta nodded as he tore off the last of his bandages, now fully healed with his power and strength restored by a magical senzu bean. It was an incredible thing, really, far more useful than rejuvenation chambers. Bare-chested, Vegeta didn't bother putting his uniform top back on as he picked up his Saiyan armor. Raditz frowned at the new scars on the prince's body that hadn't been there before. Between that and his lack of a tail, which Raditz had noticed but was too afraid to ask questions about, he already knew that Vegeta must have left out quite a few details in his story. Vegeta tugged down his armor over his head, leaving his arms bare. He then picked up his gloves and started slipping them on. "They lied to you," he finally said, keeping his eyes on what he was doing. "This is the only way. You know what to do." Raditz said nothing. Not once had anyone made any mention of the Dragon Balls to him in the entire time he'd been on Earth. It was obvious now that they didn't trust him. His tail twitched with his suppressed anger and odd feeling of betrayal. Sure, he didn't like any of them, with the exception of Goku and Gohan. And hell, he even found Goku to be extremely aggravating with how scatterbrained he was. Still, they were brothers. Kin. The idea was still very foreign to Raditz, but he was making an honest-to-God attempt at embracing the concept of having a brother. After all, they had to stick together to fight Freeza. It was their Saiyan duty to do so, under the then false knowledge that they were the last Saiyans alive. But how could his own brother have kept such a huge secret from him? With the Dragon Balls, they could have wished for ultimate power. Immortality. Something, anything to help them against Freeza. Yet everyone apparently preferred to die rather than let him know of the Dragon Balls. After all he'd done for them, sparing them, training them, helping them, Vegeta pulled on his last glove, and glanced up at him. Raditz made eye contact with his prince and they shared a silent understanding. Raditz gave a heavy nod of acceptance and turned around, walking out of the room with his prince on his heels. Bulma rubbed at her eyes. She had Raditz's green scouter opened up on the kitchen table in front of her. He didn't use it, having learned to sense ki from the Z-Warriors, but she was fascinated by the advanced circuitry inside of it. As a side project, she was trying to rebuild the scouter to make it more sophisticated. Across the table from her, Yamcha was leaning back in his chair. His feet were kicked up on the table, his ankles crossed. His hands were folded behind his head. A toothpick was dangling at his lips as he sat with his eyes closed. He knew Raditz would come around sooner or later and order him back to his assigned post. The Z-Warriors were all responsible for different areas on the planet, in case an alien ship landed. Their assignment was to take the ship down and make it crash land, to give everyone else time to get there. Right now, he didn't care too much about that. He was just enjoying some nice, quiet time with his girlfriend. Finally, Bulma sighed and got up. "I'm going to go outside for a smoke. I need something to settle me down." Yamcha frowned and opened his eyes to look at her. He hated that habit of hers. "Why don't you just have a drink or something?" Bulma sighed and rolled her eyes. "Not up for it right now, Yamcha." "Alright," he relented. He wasn't up for arguing right now either. "Want me to come with you?" "No, it's okay. I won't be long." She left the kitchen. Yamcha shrugged and closed his eyes. Bulma stepped outside into the fresh air, pulling out a pack of cigarettes. She was opening it to pull one out, when a rough hand suddenly clamped over her mouth from behind. Bulma's scream was muffled as a strong arm wrapped around her waist from behind, hauling her back into the compound. She struggled as much as she could, clawing at the hand over her mouth and kicking wildly as she was dragged through the living room, right past the kitchen where Yamcha was obliviously humming a tune to himself, and into a large storage closet. Yamcha did glance over in suspicion when he heard the door close, but shrugged, not thinking much of it. The hand that was around Bulma's waist was removed, and then it was fisted painfully in her hair. Before she could even reach up to try to free the iron grip in her hair, there was a growl before she was slammed back hard against the wall. Bulma whimpered, tears coming to her eyes, too shocked and too dazed to scream again. She didn't get the chance, before she suddenly found herself face to face with Vegeta. She backed up, but she was already against the wall. Her breath caught at the look in his dark eyes. It was one of borderline insanity and deadly rage, and it chilled her to her bones. Bulma desperately pleaded, "Please, don't hurt me, shut the fuck up." Vegeta hissed right in her face, seizing her tightly and painfully by the throat and pinning her to the wall. Bulma was shaking from her fear at this point, trying valiantly not to cry, but the man in front of her was the most terrifying and frightening man she had ever seen in her life. "Scream and I'll kill you and everyone in this house. Understand?" he snarled. Bulma was barely able to nod. "Listen to me good, bitch, because I won't repeat myself. I want the radar to find the Dragon Balls," Vegeta sneered, leaning in so close to her that their noses were almost touching. Bulma was certain that the darkness in his eyes could lead the most virtuous straight to the depths of hell. "And I want it now." I don't know what you're talking about." Vegeta growled low in his throat. He pulled her off the wall, and then slammed her painfully back into it again. Bulma squealed in pain, tears streaming down her face now as she felt warm blood on the back of her head from the brutal impact, her vision swimming. Vegeta threateningly raised his free hand. He closed his fist, and blue fire immediately surrounded it. "Last chance before I kill everyone in this place," Vegeta snarled. He leaned in close to her and Bulma's shaking intensified. She held back the disgust and raw fear as he slowly inhaled by her neck, before he whispered dangerously in her ear, "And I'll save you for last, so you can watch it all happen." "Hell." Maybe me and you can have a little fun, he added in a husky voice, nipping painfully at her ear. Bulma? Yamcha's voice sounded out. Vegeta withdrew from Bulma, keeping his grip tight on her throat as he looked at the door. His eyes narrowed. Well, looks like we have company, he said, shooting Bulma a maniacal smirk that sent chills down her spine. Don't hurt him, Bulma pleaded in a hoarse whisper. I'll give you what you want. Vegeta didn't have time to respond before Yamcha finally opened the door. He had tracked down Bulma's weak key, especially when he felt it spiking. You okay? He froze at the sight of Vegeta in front of him, inches away from Bulma. The heiress had her hands on Vegeta's hand which was gripping her throat, and she shot her boyfriend a pleading look. Yamcha let her go, Yamcha growled, clenching his hands into fists. Vegeta chuckled, raising his hand towards Yamcha. The blue fire grew in waves that flickered up and down his arm. This doesn't concern you, weakling. Your woman works for me now, and I will do with her what I want, when I want. I suggest you leave. I'll only warn you once, and I suggest you let her go, right now. Yamcha, don't. Bulma screamed right as he charged Vegeta. It happened so fast that it was almost a blur to the heiress. The prince disappeared right before Yamcha could punch him. Vegeta phased in right behind him. Without any hesitation or remorse, he grabbed the back of Yamcha's GI, pulled him backwards towards him, and ruthlessly drove his other fist right through Yamcha's chest. Bulma lost the strength to stand and slid down the wall, shaking and on the edge of shock as Vegeta pulled his now blood-soaked arm out. Yamcha collapsed in a heap right in front of Bulma. She stared at him in blank disbelief, her brain not computing what her eyes were seeing as her vision blurred with tears. She couldn't remember how to breathe. Warned him, Vegeta said casually with a shrug. He turned back to Bulma and smirked down at her. Now then, where were we? Vegeta was reaching down to haul up the completely dazed woman with the arm that was soaked with her love's blood, when he was violently tackled by a blur of lavender and blue. The impact was so strong that it sent Vegeta crashing through the wall and flying outside, until he finally skidded to a stop with his face on the grass. Meanwhile, not too far away, Gohan and Piccolo immediately looked over towards Capsule Corporation. Piccolo stood up, but Raditz stood up as well. Stand down, Namek, Raditz ordered harshly. What is going on? Gohan asked warily as Piccolo glared at Raditz. That's what I would like to know, Piccolo growled. You won't interfere, Raditz informed the Namek, ignoring his nephew. Interfere with what? Piccolo demanded. He actually felt a chill when he saw the smirk spread over Raditz's face. Destiny. The prince growled and got up to his hands and knees, spitting out grass and rubbing the dirt off his face. His gaze darkened as he slowly looked over his shoulder at the teenager who had delivered the impact. What the fuck are you doing? Trunks shouted from behind him. He had finally been roused from his sleep when he felt Yamcha's key spike. Almost immediately, he felt it drop to nothing. That was all he needed to sense to know what had happened, but it had not prepared him for the actual sight of his father standing over Yamcha's bloodied corpse. Vegeta got up to his feet. Turning around to face his son, he dusted himself off like nothing happened. Take it easy, kid, take it easy? Take it easy? You just killed Yamcha. Why did you do that? Are you insane? Trunks screamed at him. I warned him and he charged me. What else was I going to do? Vegeta asked innocently, a smirk creeping over his face. What is wrong with you? Trunks, Vegeta said, his expression turning serious. There are things called Dragon Balls on this planet. They can grant you any wish you want. Raditz and I are going to collect them. Trunks blinked at him. What? What are you talking about? You heard me. That woman there, she has a radar that will let us track them. If we do it fast enough, we can make a wish before Freeza and his men get to this planet. Father, Trunks started, trying to ignore the way his skin was crawling at the madness in his father's eyes. You don't need the Dragon Balls. I can defeat Freeza. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I don't take chances. We will only have one shot at this. We need the Dragon Balls. I won't let you have them. Trunks growled at him. Almost unconsciously, Vegeta turned a little to his side as he crossed his arms over his armor. He slowly started circling. Without even realizing it, Trunks started mirroring his movement. And what are you going to do to stop me, boy? Vegeta sneered, raising an eyebrow with mock curiosity. You know you don't have it in you to kill your dear father. You couldn't even do it when I was half dead, asking you to end me. What makes you think you can do it now? I don't have to kill you to stop you. That's where you're wrong, kid. What are you going to do? Knock me unconscious for the rest of time? Bind me? Throw me in a jail like the Tuffles? Face the facts. If you want to stop me, you will have to kill me. Can you do it, boy? Because if the tables are turned, you know I can. Father, please, Trunks desperately pleaded. I don't want to fight you. Trunks, don't you see? Vegeta pressed, trying to make his son see the light. We could wish for immortality. Then it would only be a matter of time until one of us defeats Freeza, and then I could rule this dimension like I was always meant to. You are my son, a true Saiyan elite, and your place is by my side while we rule for all of eternity. This is your destiny as much as it is mine. You never have to be at the mercy of androids again. You could have anything and everything you ever wanted. This is what we were born to do. Trunks felt his heart drop to his stomach. In that moment, he already knew that he was not going to win this argument. He shook his head in dismay, trying to ignore the voice crawling up through his soul, whispering in his ear that maybe he should have killed Vegeta back when his father requested it. He shook his head to rid the thought. The teenager released a slow breath. "I can't help you do this," he finally said. His blue eyes darkened, and he added, "I won't let you." Vegeta narrowed his eyes. He didn't want Trunks on the other side, but he was not going to budge. With a wish for immortality, he would never again be in the position he was in back on Frieza's flagship. Broken physically, shattered mentally, pleading for his tail, begging for mercy. It made bile of hatred rise up in Vegeta's throat. How many times had Frieza stood over him, spilled his blood, broken him, humiliated him? He had slaughtered his family, destroyed his people, enslaved and corrupted him, driven him to the point of insanity. No, the Dragon Balls were the answer Vegeta had been waiting for his entire life. Nothing was going to stop him, not even his son. Vegeta finally nodded in understanding, lowering his arms to his sides, squaring his shoulders for battle. "One last chance to remember your place, boy, and take your place by my side. Remember, if you aren't with me, then you are against me. What are you going to do? Kill me? When provided the opportunity, yes. I don't think you can." Vegeta threw his head back and laughed out loud. "Of course I can. I don't make ridiculous attachments like you. That's what makes you weak," he spat out in disgust. "I am Prince Vegeta first, foremost, and always. Your father second. Remember that." Trunks swallowed heavily. He reached up for his sword as the two began slowly circling each other again. "I don't want to fight you, but I will. This isn't a spar, boy. If you engage me right now, be prepared to fight to the death. You can't win this fight, father. You're outmatched. You'll lose." Trunks spat out bluntly, drawing out his sword. Vegeta snarled hatefully at him. "I've never lost a fight in my life outside of Frieza's army, and I'm sure as hell not going to start today," he growled, digging his heel into the grass as he shifted into a fight stance. "Let's go somewhere else," Trunks said, glancing around at the urban area they were in. "We can dash." Vegeta suddenly phased in behind him. Trunks blocked a kick aimed for his neck, and whirled around, trying to elbow his father. Vegeta phased out and reappeared above him, orange ki raging with flames on both of his hands. The prince then started launching a series of missile-like ki attacks that were aimed everywhere except Trunks. Suddenly, the teenager found himself trying to block all of Vegeta's attacks at once. The prince was ruthlessly targeting everything he could see: the Capsule Corp compound, the cars moving some streets away, women and children he could see walking. Anything and everything that moved, Vegeta aimed to kill as Trunks raced to save innocents from being slaughtered, especially the compound where his family was. Trunks blocked the last key attack right as Vegeta phased in behind him. The prince immediately took advantage of his son's distraction and punched him in the back of his head. The teenager was briefly knocked off his game, his head spinning from the impact. He still hadn't quite recovered from the crash of their ship. "Transform into a Super Saiyan," Vegeta yelled at him. He grabbed Trunks and spun him around, but the teenager snarled and kneed him hard in the stomach. Trunks then punched Vegeta hard. The prince was violently thrown back down to the ground from the impact, crashing through a tree on his way there. Vegeta rolled over a bit, favoring his side as he got up to his feet. He glared up at Trunks, who was still in midair. The teenager put his sword back and shook his head. "I don't need to transform to beat you," Trunks sneered. Vegeta grit his teeth together, his blue aura enveloping him as he growled. Trunks knew it was a low blow, but he didn't care. His father was out of control, and the teenager was pissed now. Pissed from all of this. He didn't want any of this, and he was sick and tired of having all of this happen to him. He had tried hard to bond with his father, understand his father, but his patience was finally starting to wear out. Vegeta met him in midair as Trunks brought up his arms to block his father's punch aimed for his chest. Trunks tried to retaliate when the prince appeared behind him and caught him with a hard knee to his ribs that briefly knocked the wind out of him. It was only then that Trunks realized that his father was considerably faster than he had been before. It was taking a lot more effort than he thought it would to block and dodge his father's creative and relentless attacks without transforming into a Super Saiyan. Trunks cursed as the two exchanged lightning-fast near misses, with Vegeta on the offensive. He couldn't keep holding back. When Vegeta reappeared in front of him, Trunks blocked a kick, batted a punch away, raised his hand up less than a foot away from his father's chest, and fired a vicious ki blast. Vegeta crashed back to the ground hard, an explosion of grass and dirt blowing up with the impact of his landing. This time he was slow to get back up. He swallowed and tried catching his breath as he looked up at his son. "Just give up. You can't win, father." Vegeta's eye twitched, a vein in his temple throbbing with his rage. Finally, he let out a scream that hardly sounded human, and with a flash of light, he took to the sky. His aura was sparking a mixture of blue and purple as he shot up past Trunks. "Let's see you block this." Vegeta screamed down at him, pulling his hands back as electricity shot up around him. Trunks blinked in surprise when he felt his father's ki surging to levels he'd never sensed his father reach before. The teenager squared his shoulders and let out a slow, shaky breath as he watched Vegeta power up. He had to put an end to this, and soon. Vegeta growled, and a bright blue light sparked up between his hands. It glowed brightly, before suddenly sparking like a flickering light bulb. Vegeta shook his head, like he was trying to shake something off. Trunks frowned a little when he felt his father's ki slowly start to come back down. Vegeta shook his head again, blinking rapidly as he started losing his hold on his Gallic gun power-up. Trunks' brows furrowed together when he saw his father squeeze his eyes shut in pain, the bright blue light disappearing. Finally, the aura that had surrounded Vegeta vanished. His ki dropped to nothing, and he fell from the sky. Trunks caught Vegeta and they both fell together to the ground. Trunks immediately got out from underneath his father, who rolled onto his side. Vegeta clutched his chest and screamed into the grass in agony. "What's wrong?" Trunks asked in a panic, his heart skipping a beat when he saw Vegeta grab his chest. Surely, it wasn't the heart virus that plagued Goku in his time, was it? I can't. Vegeta tried gasping out, before squeezing his eyes shut and screaming again. He reached up and clenched a fistful of grass and dirt in his hand. "Okay, it's okay, just breathe. Come on, I'll help you." Trunks tried reassuring him, his eyes wide with concern. He grabbed his father and helped him up to his knees while the prince desperately latched onto his jacket. "Come on," Trunks told him, standing slowly and trying to help Vegeta stand too. He never saw Vegeta's attack coming. Vegeta viciously punched Trunks right under his jaw, putting as much strength behind the blow as he could. Trunks took the blow dead on, his head snapping back. He immediately collapsed flat on his back, knocked out cold. Vegeta snorted and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand as he stood up, suddenly fine and showing no signs of pain. "Merciful, gullible fool," Vegeta growled in disgust. His eyes were cold as he raised one hand over his son's unconscious form. His hands started to glow with lethal ki. "You're pathetic and not worthy of ruling by my side. Say good night, kid." 5 seconds later, and no shot fired. 10 seconds later, and Vegeta's hand was shaking, with no shot fired. 20 seconds later, Vegeta wiped his brow with his free hand, muttered to himself to stop being so weak, and ordered himself to fire. The ki would not release itself from his hand. Vegeta growled, his ki glowing brighter and more deadly, his entire body shaking with strain. Finally, the truth dawned on him, in all its painful clarity. He couldn't kill him. Vegeta hissed as he extinguished his ki. He ran one hand up through his hair in exasperation. He then spit on the ground, put his hands on his hips, and sighed, looking down at Trunks for a long time. Finally, he exhaled through his nose deeply in defeat, and reached down. He hauled Trunks up and slung him over his shoulder, shaking his head as he muttered curses to himself. A minute or so later, he unceremoniously dropped Trunks on the floor in one of the empty rooms of Capsule Corporation. He then did a quick ki scan, before frowning, and heading out. Bulma was desperately trying to gather her things as she heard explosions outside. Her hands were shaking as she tried figuring out which capsule was her hover jet. Luckily, her parents were out of town, so there was no one else there. On the verge of a serious breakdown from witnessing the cold-hearted murder of her boyfriend, the heiress could barely read the capsule she was picking up, cursing as her vision refused to focus and her hands refused to steady. This was the absolute worst time to realize that she was horribly unorganized. Finally, she felt a rare surge of hope when she found the right capsule. She dashed out of the compound, running for her life, before throwing the capsule. It exploded into her jet, and she was in the driver's seat almost inhumanly fast. Vegeta suddenly phased in right in front of the hover jet, his cold eyes locking on hers. Bulma shrieked in terror and tried to start up the hover jet, but her nerves were completely shot by now. She tried to escape through the passenger side door, but Vegeta reached in and grabbed her roughly by the hair, as she broke down into tears again. "You are going to give me that radar, right now." Bulma whimpered as reality slowly sank in while the prince yanked her clean out of her hover jet. Vegeta had defeated Trunks, and possibly killed him. Yamcha had said that Vegeta and Trunks were more powerful than Raditz. Goku wasn't back yet. There was no one who could stop Vegeta now. Want more thrilling stories? Subscribe to Infinite Novel and dive into infinite adventures.